Jason Arday, ex-Cambridge professor accused of plagiarism, found dead in UK a week after investigation launched. Embattled Cambridge University professor Jason Arday was found dead Friday after quitting his job at the school over allegations that he plagiarized and lied on his resume, according to a report Friday. Arday, 41, the youngest ever black professor at the lauded university, was found unresponsive in South London and later pronounced dead at the scene, according to the UK Telegraph. What the fuck happened? Sadly, a 41-year-old man was pronounced dead at the scene. His next of kin have been informed and are being supported by officers. A spokesman for the Metro Police told the paper. Bro, he looks like a demon in this image! This is a terrifying picture! Look at his fucking eyes, dude! Like, that's creepy! This is like, I would see this turning the corner in like an Egyptian pyramid while I'm trying to loot it. The eyeliner does him no favors. He got the Giga Senpaku eyes. Good lord, dude. At this time, his death is being treated as unexpected, but is not believed to be suspicious. I don't know if I believe that. Yeah, maybe, right? Maybe a man kills himself after his entire life of lies is unraveled. Like, that makes sense, sure, but I don't know. This seems a little suspicious. The case is being investigated by officers from the Met's Central South Command Unit. A file will be prepared for the coroner. Sociology professor who became a poster boy for diversity. The poster boy for diversity is somebody who got there through fraud and plagiarism. That's kind of funny. Resigned from the job on August 5th as the school launched an investigation into accusations that he plagiarized parts of his PhD dissertation and lied about positions he held at other schools. He cited an unrelenting level of public scrutiny as his reason for resigning. Not even gonna take accountability for all the fraud, my dude? What the fuck? Cambridge's diversity poster boy in plagiarism row, and this is from July 24th, I guess is when this kicked off. Youngest black professor in university's history is subject of bitter argument between academics. When Jason Arday became a Cambridge professor at the age of 37, he was lionized by the academic world and became a poster boy for the university's diversity drive. He had beaten almost impossible odds to get there. Diagnosed with autism and nonverbal until the age of 11, he had only learned to read and write at 18, but obtained a degree and a doctorate before forging a career in teaching. Now, on the eve of the publication of his autobiography, the University of Cambridge's professor of sociology of education has become the subject of a bitter row over plagiarism that has pitted his peers against each other. Sociology of education. That is a very niche professor position. That's like when I would make jokes about like the feminist angle of basket weaving. Like that's not real, nor should it be real. Oh my goodness. On one side of the argument are professors at other universities who believe Professor Arday's published works, including his PhD thesis, contain passages that are remarkably similar, and in some cases identical to other academic papers without proper attribution. On the other side of the argument are retards who know nothing. Our friends and close colleagues of Professor Arday, the youngest black professor in the university's history, who believe he is the victim of a racist smear campaign and have tried to make it an issue for the government. Article literally points out, on one side, we have people who live in reality and are noticing things, and on the other, we have delusional ideologues who want to protect one of their brethren based on race. What started as a row between academics is now lapping at the shore of politics. Both Cambridge and Liverpool John Moores University, which awarded Professor Arday his PhD, are on his side, insisting that he has done nothing wrong and the allegations are unfounded smears. If only they had a time crystal to look several weeks into the future and see just how bad things would get. This aged like fine milk. Cambridge said he had been the victim of a vile campaign to undermine his credibility. Once again, considering what we know, he had no credibility in the first place, and all of you people are so fucking blind and dumb because you want to elevate people based on immutable characteristics instead of ability. The stakes could hardly be higher, as accusations of plagiarism can be career-ending for academics, and also apparently life-ending. And accusations that later prove to be false can be equally damaging to those who make them. Well, that would be good, right? If people make an accusation and it's proven to be false, and especially if it's proven that the people making the false allegation were lying, it should be damaging to them. Why did you phrase it this way? Until now, the row had been happening away from public view, but the publication of a blog this week, which features a side-by-side comparison of Professor Arday's thesis with that of another student, has brought it out into the open. An analysis of Professor Arday's PhD thesis for the Telegraph identified more than 100 passages that are identical or nearly identical to a 2009 PhD thesis by Paula Zwozdiak-Myers, a Brunel University student. Professor Arday's 401-page thesis, titled An Exploration of Peer Monitoring Among Student Teachers to Inform Reflective Practice Within the Context of Action Research, mentions Ms. Zwozdiak-Myers 17 times. The row between his supporters and his critics centers on whether he should have explicitly credited her on every occasion he paraphrased or quoted from her work, which is titled An Analysis of the Concept Reflective Practice and an Investigation into the Development of Student Teachers' Reflective Practice Within the Context of Action Research. This is such a know-nothing sentence! What is this? What are you even talking about? And also, every time a research paper is read, and they cite someone, there is explicit citations at the end of the paper. Like, they'll put an asterisk or some numbers and shit up there. You know, what is the argument here? I don't get it. I don't fucking get it. 3 examples of the work are Arday saying, student teachers, for example, who concern themselves with diagnosing ways to challenge all pupils. And from Zwozdiak-Myers, student teachers, for example, concerned to find ways to challenge all pupils within a mixed ability. That's barely changing it. Arday extract saying, to support such context, Habermas, 1971, devised a model of knowledge which entails the understanding of, and Zwozdiak-Myers said, the critical theorist Jürgen Habermas, 1971, devised a model of knowledge constitutive interests too. Very, very large words. Notwithstanding the 2 universities' insistence that Professor Arday's work has been checked and cleared, several respected academics have urged them to look again, arguing that computer programs designed to detect copying might have missed instances in which a few words have been changed or a sentence has been paraphrased. Professor Arday made international headlines in 2023 when he became the youngest black professor in Cambridge's history at the age of 37. There is a correct way to do the first thing in history and an incorrect way to do it. Propping someone up simply because they're black, even though they have a history of plagiarism and fraud, probably not the best thing to do, especially once that is outed to you if you did not know about it. Doubling down simply because their race makes you look like a fucking retard. His rise to the top of his profession was remarkable in light of his autism, diagnosed as a child, which meant he did not speak his first word until he was 11, and left school with just 2 GCSEs. With how much autism fraud goes on in this country, I'm even questioning this. How do we know that's even real? Right, once someone's outed for fraud, everything comes into question. He studied education at undergraduate and postgraduate level, completing his PhD at Liverpool John Moores University, and went on to hold academic posts at the University of Roehampton, Durham University, and University of Glasgow, where he became Professor of Sociology of Education in 2021, before taking up a similar post at Cambridge 3 years ago. He's now written a memoir, Great and Unfortunate Things, which is set to be published next month, in which he details his improbable triumphs and heartbreaking setbacks, according to publicity material for the book. As well as his impressive academic achievements, Professor Arday attracted media coverage for multiple feats of ultra-endurance running to raise money for charity, which led to his selection as a torchbearer for the London 2012 Olympic Games. Damn. You can actually go crazy far if you have the right skin color. Scrutiny has also fallen on some of Professor Arday's listed achievements, some of which have been amended or deleted from biographies in recent months. In 2010, the professor ran 30 marathons in 35 days to raise money for Shelter and the Shooting Star Children's Hospice. He has spoken about running 300 miles in 3 days and 600 miles in 6 days, only 50 miles short of the world record for ultra-distance running over 6 days. Earlier this year, Southampton Solent University, which awarded Professor Arday an honorary degree in 2023, removed the references to running 300 miles and 600 miles from his citations on its website. Angela Ruskin University, which awarded him an honorary doctorate, recently changed the reference to 600 miles in 6 days to 600 miles in 12 days. Imagine that! In total, Professor Arday says he raised £5.5 million for more than 70 charities. Wouldn't you be able to find this out? If this was true, would you not be able to find this out pretty easily? By hey, what are the charities that you raised money for? Fellow academics began to raise concerns about the legitimacy of his published work when they carried out due diligence before inviting him to contribute to other academic papers. Good! I feel like this does not happen often enough. Like, nobody does due diligence for any reasons anymore. But asking for proof of these things is racism. Yeah, it's insane. People are just like, hey man, we've noticed some inconsistencies. Maybe you can provide us some like proofs of concept here, you know, maybe you could have some more sources, I don't know. And everyone's like, that's a racism. How dare you question this black man? Dave Harris, emeritus professor at Plymouth Marjon University, alerted Cambridge and Liverpool John Moores universities to his concerns about plagiarism in 2023. He said, in my opinion, important sections of the work of Professor Jason Arday, both his PhD thesis and some subsequent published articles, solo and jointly written, seem to display indications of serious plagiarism. I can think of no other plausible explanation for what I have read. I notified both Liverpool John Moores and Cambridge universities of my initial concerns, and they have done nothing. Of the journal editors I notified, 2 have asked for corrections. One professor of education at a Russell Group university, who was asked to remain anonymous, said they noticed inconsistencies in his published research when they carried out checks before asking him to contribute a chapter on a book about decolonialization. That's actually wicked funny. That's actually wicked funny. And they're accusing these people writing a book on decolonization of racisms because they dare to question the youngest black professor, rife with fraud. Hamilton Burger, thank you. Arday was basically race swapped. Forrest Gump! Good God. When they looked at his doctoral thesis, they identified extensive textual overlap with an earlier PhD thesis submitted by another academic at a different university. Their assessment was that the similarities were not confined to isolated passages, but formed an extensive pattern of close paraphrasing, which would not necessarily be detected by computer programs designed to detect verbatim copying of text. Evidence should be rigorously examined. Robert Dingwall, emeritus professor of social sciences at both the University of Nottingham and Nottingham Trent University, and a government advisor during the COVID pandemic, said, in the current climate, it is difficult to comment on allegations of plagiarism against a prominent minority scholar. Add it to the list, prominent minority scholar. Without seeming to take sides on EDI, equality, diversity, and inclusion. Having it EDI instead of DEI makes it sound like some sort of STD. He said the quiet part out loud. Yeah, he's a brave man. Plagiarism is, however, rightly treated as a serious academic offense at any level. We have a collective duty to call it out where there is robust evidence. From what I have seen, there certainly appears to be a prima facie case here. It may be difficult to find a suitably impartial adjudicator. I wonder why that might be. Why might it be difficult to find an impartial adjudicator when a black scholar commits fraud and lies? As a matter of fairness to all parties, the evidence should be rigorously examined and the subject invited to provide a detailed response, rather than being the victim of continuing smears and innuendos. Anyone accused of plagiarism and frauding their credentials should absolutely be treated the same way. Like, I don't think anybody would be pussyfooting around these things if this was, like, a white dude or even a white woman. This is a moment when universities in general, and sociologists in particular, might be willing to show that they are capable of living by their own standards of professional integrity. This guy's funny. He thinks there's standards of professional integrity in academia still. Potential public attack on Jason. Supporters of Professor Arday became aware last year of questions about his academic legitimacy and responded with furious accusations of racism. Yes, the people writing a book on decolonialism certainly have incredible racism toward the black people. Professor Sir Simon Baron-Cohen, the director of Cambridge's Autism Research Center and cousin of the comedian Sacha Baron Cohen, random, and Ricardo Sabates, professor of education, circulated an open letter under the heading, "Urgent, please sign anti-racism letter for Jason Arday." You need to sign an anti-racism letter instead of just investigating if this guy is as fraudulent as is claimed? Like, what are we doing here? Urgent, please sign anti-racism letter for Jason Arday. It referred to an earlier letter that was sent to the Minister of State and to which there's been progress in terms of how to tackle these issues, and warned of a potential public attack on Jason. Parliamentary records show that on September 15th last year, Jacqui Smith, the Women and Equalities Minister, why is there a position for that, met a range of academics to discuss the harassment of black academics. Asking black academics to be truthful and not fraudulent is not harassment. Dear woman, lady, sir. A spokesman for the University of Cambridge said Professor Arday had been the victim of a vile campaign to undermine his credibility, which must stop. Allegations of plagiarism regarding his thesis and journal publications have been thoroughly investigated by the relevant institutions and the journals in question. Liverpool John Moores University said in a statement, in September 2025, the university received allegations of academic misconduct against its former PhD student, Professor Jason Arday. A confidential procedure was conducted in response to those allegations, and Professor Arday's PhD still stands. We will not comment further on a private matter between the university and a former student. Professor Arday has been contacted for comment. While he can't answer you now, I don't know if he answered before then, but... Cambridge diversity poster boy faces questions over pig's head claims. Professor Jason Arday's account of being sent a severed organ is denied by police as his life story faces more scrutiny. This is like a how many things can you lie about race, you know? The Cambridge professor at the center of a plagiarism row is facing questions over his claim that a pig's head was sent to his family home. Professor Jason Arday previously said in a newspaper interview that a severed pig's head was delivered to his parents' address during a campaign of intimidation and abuse that has lasted for years. He told the paper that police investigated the incident and had found a butcher's shop that sold a whole hog on the morning of the alleged attack. However, the Metropolitan Police has confirmed that no investigation took place and that it could find no record of its officers visiting any butchers. The butchers named by Professor Arday are also reported to have denied receiving any visit from police. Professor Arday, who is a professor of sociology of education, has been the subject of plagiarism claims after the Telegraph revealed he was accused of copying parts of his PhD thesis from another student. Chat, what if this is like a 7,000 IQ play? What if his entire purpose was to fraudulently become a professor of sociology of education because he knew that all of this was bullshit and he knew that he would be treated in a privileged manner due to the color of his skin? And so he would be shielded from a lot of criticism that he otherwise would be subject to for this amount of lies if he was any other skin color. And after he fakes his death, he plans to release his actual dissertation paper, which is about how all of this is bullshit and how everyone is operating on immense amounts of lies and obfuscations and also fraud themselves. That would be some like 7,000 IQ shit, would it not? Anything is possible. Sounds like he was incapable of ever telling the truth ever. Yeah, the more reasonable answer is just he was easily taking advantage of a system that prioritizes his skin color over his abilities. James Lindsay! He saw Juicy Smollet's false claims and said, "Hold my beer!" The plagiarism row has made international headlines, including in the US, after analysis of Professor Arday's PhD thesis showed more than 180 separate passages were identical or near identical to the other student's thesis. He is also facing questions over claims he made about his charity fundraising and about his athletic prowess, including a claim that he once ran 30 marathons in 35 days, the final 9 of them with a broken leg. How did that not raise any fucking red flags? You ran 9 marathons with a broken leg and no one questioned that just because he's black? Can't ask him for proof or credibility. That'd be racist in clown world. Cambridge insists Professor Arday is the victim of a vile campaign to undermine his credibility. Yeah, like the entire life ruination campaign against me is considerably billed by the other side as Kirsche harassed a noble trans woman until she was fired from her job. The university is facing a staff revolt over its refusal to re-examine his academic credentials. I know these people don't care about like academic credentials or having credibility because as long as they prop each other up, they have credibility in a circle. But it's like, you would think that any normal person in this scenario would just be like, you do realize that you undermine your own credibility as well as the credibility of the institution you work for, thus devaluing everyone who has any kind of credentials from this institution by refusing to look into fraud. According to The Guardian, Professor Arday claimed in a previous interview that the severed pig's head had been delivered in a large cardboard box to his parents' home address in South London. He said that he intercepted the package and immediately threw it away, only telling the police several months later. How did he know that it was going to be a pig's head in a cardboard box for him to intercept the package? And also, if someone is delivering you a pig's head, it's not going to be in a large cardboard box. It's going to just be on your porch or on your deck or in your bed, depending on if you keep your shit locked up. If he did manage to intercept it, if he did have some clairvoyant ability to know, oh no, this package delivered to my parents that I somehow know that got delivered there, I must intercept it before they get home. Why would he wait and tell the police months later? That's also confounding. Because if that was real, you would want to tell the police immediately. Not only would you want to catch the person leaving you vile threats like that, but that is a great way to get a fuck ton of attention if it's real. Why would you wait? The Guardian also reported speaking to the local butcher named by Professor Arday, who said no police officer had come in to ask them about a pig. Asked whether they were sure, the butcher explained, that's the kind of thing we'd remember. Yeah, it would not be every day that your butcher shop gets, like, named in a someone sent me a severed pig's head as a death threat kind of investigation. That is something the butcher would remember. Anything is possible in clown world. Very true. Source, I made it up. You can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs, Jack. Professor Arday reportedly took no photographs of the pig's head and could produce no messages in which he had discussed it with friends, family, colleagues, or the police. And you're not supposed to question that? Are we being real here? Are we being real? Like, fucking Ethan Klein got literal human skulls sent to his house, and he took extensive pictures of that, because that's fucking crazy and horrifying. The newspaper also reported Professor Arday telling them in an interview that he had been confronted at his faculty building on 2 occasions by a masked man threatening to harm him if he did not resign.
No one cared who I was till I put on the mask.
On the second occasion, he said, the intruder produced a knife and threatened him with it. Did they also say that Cambridge is MAGA country when they attacked him? What the how are people believing that? And did not inform colleagues that a masked man with a knife was in the faculty building. And yet people still believed it. What the fuck? The intruder was not captured on CCTV on either occasion, and no one in the faculty reported seeing anyone suspicious. He just makes shit the fuck up. He just makes it the fuck up, buddy. What the hell? The interviews in which Professor Arday made the claims did not appear to have been published online, but the academic stood by his claims of abuse and harassment when asked. To be honest with you, I thought you'd just believe me, he told The Guardian. Why would I lie? Because everyone everywhere at this point, even if they refuse to say it publicly, knows that everyone on your side of politics just lies to get what they want. That's just a leftist thing at this point. It's like, even if it wasn't a leftist thing, if you are making claims, especially in an academic setting, people are gonna be like, hey, do you have proof that that happened, buddy? Everything he said has been a lie. There's not a single truthful thing about this guy. Is he even actually black, or is he like some sort of white or Hispanic dude doing the Nuka Zeus treatment? He also defended his claims that he had raised £5.5 million for charity, although clarified that the money was raised with the help of many fundraising collectives over a 2-decade period. So that means it'll be hard to find out the total number of anything raised, so you can just claim things and people can't check it. Professor Arday said that he could not identify other people who took part in these efforts, as he has signed non-disclosure agreements preventing him from revealing that information. Well, ain't that convenient? In a separate interview with The Times, Professor Arday admitted a series of errors in his work, but attributed some to his autism. Professor, you have to believe me, it's the autism. The autism made me lie. Explaining that his method of making sense of information relied heavily on mimicry. He also stood by his record of running 30 marathons in 35 days, 300 miles in 3 days on a treadmill, and 600 miles in 12 days. I thought it was 6 days. I can't make people believe me, he said, and nobody lives their life having a receipt for every single thing they say or they've done. While true, if you start being a proven liar, nobody's gonna believe anything you say anymore. He insisted that the positioning of me as this kind of liar and a fantasist is totally unacceptable, claiming that he had been subjected to a dark arts campaign. I have invoked Harry Potter, therefore your claims have no merit. A spokesman for Cambridge University said it would not comment on specific allegations. A source at the university said that Professor Arday had received death threats, abuse, and correspondence claiming that he did not belong in Cambridge. I mean, this last part is just true. This last part isn't even like a threat or harassment. This is just, hey, you're a plagiarizing, lying freak who doesn't belong here. That's just true. They said the university and the faculty are supporting Professor Arday amid concerns for his well-being and safety. Professor Arday was contacted for comment. He's Chicken Little. Police investigated journalist who tried to expose Cambridge professor. Can we ask a question? If an investigative journalist is actually trying to do journalism, why would the police investigate the journalist instead of the target of the journalist, right? This just seems, once again, if you have the correct skin color or the correct politics, you can use the police to your advantage to get people to stop investigating you for crimes. And that seems rather fucked up. We have such a complete dearth of real journalists in current year. I would like to see more journalists actually living up to the name instead of being disgusting prostitutes like the majority of journalists are today. Scotland Yard spent 4 months investigating a journalist who tried to expose the plagiarism row that's now engulfed Cambridge University. Jack Grove, a reporter for Times Higher Education, was accused of harassment after he emailed a series of questions to Professor Jason Arday about his academic record. Professor Arday also hired the law firm Carter Ruck, which suggested in a letter to THE, Times Higher Education, that its apparent attack on him may be racially motivated. The Metropolitan Police spent 4 months looking into the claim of harassment before deciding in February to close the case. Just dragged this journalist actually trying to do a good job through 4 months of hell and then just dropped it because they knew that they didn't have a case in the first place. The police did not interview Mr. Grove, who only found out about the investigation when the Met contacted him to inform him that they would not be taking action. What the fuck? How do you have a 4-month investigation and not even contact the person you're investigating a single time? Like, even to do the, we're investigating some stuff that's happening in the area. We just wanted to get your opinion. Like, not a single time? There's seemingly a law in Great Britain that prevents something like this if it makes people uncomfortable or causes them mental pain. I fucking hate remembering that the UK is a real country. The Met also reportedly passed on a complaint to another force about an academic who was also looking into the academic record of Professor Arday, but the other force refused to investigate. Oh my god. A smart police force somewhere in the UK? The Met is among forces that have been accused in recent months of wasting time on pointless investigations while insisting that they do not have the manpower to routinely attend to burglaries and other crimes. It's simple. They just want those other crimes to actually happen, and that's why they won't investigate them. Mr. Grove told the Telegraph that he had been stunned to receive a phone call from the police to be told he had been investigated simply for doing his job. I'd be fucking stunned too. Also, this guy has like 1930s journalist physiognomy. Like this guy was born to be a real journalist and not one of the shitty ones we have today. A burglary is hard to solve. True. He said, I was told a complaint had been made against me and investigated, but the force was not taking it forward. The officer told me that I shouldn't contact Professor Arday again because his mental health had been affected by my actions. Yes, this man that you're investigating for fraud, the fraud investigation actually really harms his mental state, so you must stop investigating post-haste. The UK is not a real country. I asked him what I had done, and he said that there had been online posts about Professor Arday. I said I'd never posted anything about him and asked if he realized he was speaking to a journalist who was investigating a story. He didn't really respond, but repeated his request for me not to contact Professor Arday again, citing his mental health. I was just doing my job. Journalists should be free to ask questions of anyone, even star professors. It's very rare that academics refuse to speak to the press. That caused me to look into this matter further, and I was astonished by what I found. Mr. Grove had started looking into Professor Arday's background after being tipped off by academics who had found apparent evidence of plagiarism in his work. PhD thesis from Liverpool, John Moores University. Analysis of the thesis found 188 passages that were identical or very similar to those in another student's 2009 thesis. We read some of those excerpts in the other article. He emailed Professor Arday and Cambridge University, as well as Liverpool John Moores University, which had awarded him the PhD, to ask questions about the apparent overlap with another student's PhD. He also asked questions about Professor Arday's claims of raising £5.5 million for charity through seemingly improbable feats of ultra-distance running. That prompted the letter from Carter Ruck in September last year, and in November last year, a formal complaint of harassment was made to the police. Mr. Grove has never been told who made the complaint. The university denied that it was them. Separately, The Guardian reported that the Met passed on a complaint of harassment to Devon and Cornwall police that had been made about a professor at Plymouth Marjan University. Professor David Harris had contacted Cambridge with his own concerns about Professor Arday's work, which triggered the complaint to the Met, and Devon and Cornwall police refused to investigate, Guardian reported. Spokesman for the Met said on November 18, 2025, the Met received an allegation of harassment and the case was closed in February this year. Spokesman for Cambridge University said the university did not make any complaint to the police against Jack Grove in 2025. Neither was it aware of any such complaint being made. Professor Arday was contacted for comment, and Professor Arday has, in recent days, put his apparent plagiarism down to autism, saying he absorbs information through mimicry. He has also admitted that a claim about running 600 miles in 6 days for charity was wrong, saying that it took 12 days. And has said that he did not single-handedly raise $5.5 million for charity, but was part of a syndicate of around 100 people, none of whom he can name because he signed a non-disclosure agreement. It's all just so convenient. It's all so convenient, man. He was propped up and sponsored by someone and they didn't want it getting out. Oh, fucking probably, man. It also emerged on Tuesday that Professor Arday falsely claimed to have been a visiting professor at Ohio State University. How are they just finding out everything about this man is a lie? Is he even real? Is this even a real person? Has anyone seen them in the flesh? Is like Professor Arday just a completely made up AI individual someone was using for their own thesis project? On the Cambridge Faculty of Education page, he claims to be a visiting professor at the U.S. University in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. However, a university spokesman said that they had no record of an employee by that name, and that visiting professors appear in our employment records. Ohio State's Office of Diversity and Inclusion also closed last year. It comes a day after Glasgow University denied Professor Arday's claims that he was a visiting professor in the university's School of Education. He's like, yeah, I was a visiting professor at all of these places. And all of these places are like, literally fucking, who is that? Police forces around the country have been accused of wasting resources on investigating non-crimes. Avon and Somerset police arrested an evangelical pastor for inciting religious hatred after he gave a sermon criticizing Islam and transgender ideology, before deciding to take no action. Police in Hertfordshire arrested the parents of a 9-year-old girl in 2025 after they made disparaging comments about her primary school in a WhatsApp group. The investigation was dropped 5 weeks later. In 2020, Scotland Yard investigated Darren Grimes, the Conservative commentator, on suspicion of inciting racial hatred, after he released an interview with Dr. David Starkley, the historian, about the slave trade. The force later accepted no offense had taken place.
Wouldn't it be the most ridiculous story ever told if the boy who couldn't read and write at 18 gets a PhD before he's 30?
That's Cambridge Professor of Sociology of Education,
Jason
Arday. And
it's
his
not
story
true.
is the most ridiculous ever told. Jason's story got off to a tough start. He was diagnosed with autism and global development delay and was nonverbal.
4 or 5 hours of speech therapy a day from the age of 3. There is nothing to suggest that.
This kind of reminds me of, like, I can't remember if it was in the US or the UK, but they were like, oh my god, the first Down syndrome woman appointed to a political position. And I was like, why are we celebrating that? Shouldn't we not want developmentally disabled people in important positions of power? Like, I mean, maybe I'm too woke, but that just seems like it would be a disaster.
Any of this is working. At 11, go into this room, we go through the same kind of warm exercises as we normally did. The speech
That was
therapist
in Spain. Thank you, Chad.
said
It was
to me,
Spain.
hello Jason, as she always did, and I just responded hello. It's quite a strange thing to hear your own voice for the first time when you're 11.
And once Jason started, he couldn't stop. He made it all the way to becoming one of the youngest professors ever at Cambridge. And it might not stop there.
You know, you're in a situation where you're on the cusp of doing something that you've always wanted to do. Enjoy it.
I like how this whole video is basically just him flaunting about getting away with lying so much. Wouldn't it just be the most ridiculous thing? DEI fraud and cover-up at Cambridge. What the fuck is wrong with you? Fucking got her ass. These mods are trolling. They're actually out here to sabotage me. Fucking hell, dude. I get googly-eyed. Fuck. I already forgot what I was going to, like, look for. My mod chat, fuck me. I get bullied, streamer, god damn it. DEI fraud and cover-up at Cambridge. Wouldn't it be the most ridiculous story ever told if the boy who couldn't read and write at 18 gets a PhD before he's 30? Wait, hold on. He was non-verbal until he was 11, and he couldn't read and write at 18. How the fuck did he even graduate high school? What are we doing here? What the fuck are we doing here? Under the influence of a white high school teacher who gave him agency, Arday pursued higher education. Someone find this teacher. They are doing a disservice to everyone everywhere. After receiving a PhD from Liverpool John Moores University, he rocketed up the academic ladder as a scholar of racism. I hate Clown World so fucking much, bros. He rocketed up the academic ladder as a scholar of racism, education, and inequality. In 3 years, he went from senior lecturer at Roehampton to associate professor at Durham to professor at Glasgow, 2018 through 2021. Ivy League universities, plural, tried to recruit him, but he had his heart set on Oxford or Cambridge. In 2023, at age 37, he became the youngest black full professor in the history of Cambridge. He is one of the youngest people of any race to ever hold a chair professorship at Oxbridge. And all of it was a lie. All of it was fake. All of it was completely made the fuck up. And everyone along the way just continued encouraging him and lifting him up because they're all incredibly fucking racist. In his spare time, Arday ran 30 marathons in 35 days and 300 miles in 3 days. As of 2023, he had worked with more than 70 charities and raised more than £5 million. Up until his appointment at Cambridge, Arday continued to face unspecified hardships. As reported by The Guardian in 2023, despite previously being a professor at Durham and Glasgow, he had barely slept over the past 15 years, working through most nights, often on his academic and charity work, but sometimes just to make ends meet. You telling me that this boy prodigy, like non-verbal autistic become genius was unable to figure out how to make money? I was like, every new lie that comes out is just like, how the fuck did no one question this? He has received hundreds of thousands of letters and emails from fans all over the world. This indicates a level of fame comparable to an upper middle tier household name celebrity. And he got there through lying. But how much of their most ridiculous story ever told is true? I was recently contacted by a faculty member at Cambridge, whose name I will not reveal, who alleges that Arday is a plagiarist and fabulist. My source claims that many, if not most, professors at Cambridge have known about this for more than a year. However, Arday and/or Cambridge's administration are using intimidation and legal threats to squelch the story. As far as I'm aware, the only mention of Arday's alleged plagiarism that exists in the public domain is on the personal website of retired Plymouth Marjon University professor Dave Harris. More on that later. This is pretty much how DEI gets anyone into anything. Remember? I mean, you had Kim Belair saying you have to just hire your friends and your friends can learn how to do the work while they're in the industry. They don't need prior experience. You have bridge people actively saying if you can just hire people to get them into these positions, you know, we can end up doing more of the work and they can learn how to do things while they're already in the position. Nothing in DEI cares about how qualified someone is. And in fact, the less qualified they are, the more you can make up and pretend that they're even overqualified. It's an entire racket of fraudulent people protecting other fraudulent people. It is impossible to prove or disprove Arday's biographical claims without more direct evidence. Therefore, I will only address questions about his scholarship. Here, I present evidence that starting with his PhD dissertation, Arday routinely passes off the words and ideas of others as his own. If one removes the apparently plagiarized material from his record, there is little or no real scholarship. I discuss the cover-up by senior administrators at Cambridge and the broader implications for free speech and DEI ideology. I ran Arday's 2015 PhD dissertation through the plagiarism detection program CopyLeaks. It found substantial overlap with previously published work, particularly a dissertation submitted by Paula Zwazdiak-Myers in 2009. Zwazdiak-Myers received her degree from Brunel University London, where she's currently a reader in education. The chart below compares passages from Arday 2015 and Zwazdiak-Myers 2009. From literally the first page of the introduction to his dissertation, which starts on page 17 of the manuscript, Arday relies heavily on Zwazdiak-Myers for key ideas and arguments.
Spicy cat raid.
Many passages are lifted with minimal editing, sometimes retaining copy editing mistakes from the original source. That's so fucked, dude. Yellow highlights are verbatim copying, and green highlights are paraphrasing or other minor alterations. That's a lot of yellow. That's a lot of yellow, buddy. Holy. It looks like he basically just copy-pasted her whole thing and changed just a couple of words, you know? You know? There's a couple of people I've seen in chat being like, well, to be fair, I mean, it's like, that's just something we're told to paraphrase, you know? This is just normal. Why are you defending the fraudulent DEI scholar, man? Why would you defend that? That's a lot of fucking yellow, man. There's barely any non-highlighted text. That's fucking crazy. Paraphrasing, Arday reproduces Zwazdiak-Myers' copy editing mistake, a comma instead of a period after et al. At the end of the passage. He cites Pollard, 2011. Imagine not even fixing the fucking copying mistakes and grammar mistakes, dude. Verbatim copying and paraphrasing, Arday cites a Lowran, 2010. Paraphrasing, some verbatim copying, nearly verbatim copying, followed by a reference to Bode. More verbatim copying and paraphrasing. Neither Athar Hassan nor Khan are cited anywhere in Arday's dissertation. 10 most important publications. Dave Harris is a retired professor of leisure and education at Plymouth Marjan University. He hosts a website that provides free teaching materials. Harris writes that he first read Arday's work with the intention of summarizing the arguments to make them accessible. However, what he euphemistically refers to as oddities were so frequent that they dominated his reading. Harris emailed Arday pointing out examples and asking if he could provide clarification. Arday replied to Harris as follows: "Please do not email me again. Should you have the time to spare, I invite you to direct your resources elsewhere. Anything further from you will be considered bullying and harassment. You dare question a black scholar? You racist?" Definitely not the response of a guilty person whatsoever. After Harris and his colleague prodded several journal editors and administrators at Cambridge, 2 journals issued corrections to Arday's publications. Social Sciences published the following note regarding Arday's 2018 paper: "Understanding Mental Health, What are the Issues for Black and Ethnic Minority Students at University?" The publication, Arday 2018, has been amended to increase the clarity of citation sources within the text. Previously, the statement that the research had been adapted from Mimon 2016 appeared in Section 4, but inadvertently omitted overlap between the 2 publications in prior sections. The author has revised the text to address this so that it is clear where the ideas were adapted from in past research. Consequentially, the number of times a Memon 2016 has been referenced has increased. Text corrections to clarify citation sources and revised text have been made in the following sections: Abstract, Introduction, Materials and Methods, Exploring Mental Health for Black and Ethnic Minorities Within Higher Education, Personal and Community Factors, Cultural Identity and Fear of Stigmatization, Isolation, Social and Community Networks, Gender Differences, Communication and Relationships between Service User and Healthcare Provider, Communication, Cultural Naivety, Insensitivity, and Discrimination, Power and Agency, Language and Silencing, Discussion, Conclusions and Recommendations. Acknowledgements have been added in the original publication. There were missing citations that have now been inserted. Citations to Gray 2013 and Mimon 2016 have been inserted in the abstract. And there's a bunch of other ones here that have been added. That's a lot of rereading the same names. Isn't it just easier to make your own PhD? This is just silly. This was him making his own PhD. He got a PhD for free. He just stole other people's shit, passed it off as his own, and if anyone questioned him, he called him a bully. The note appears to acknowledge that Arday's entire paper is a work of plagiarism. However, the editor-in-chief was satisfied by Arday adding citations to the plagiarized sources and stating that the scientific conclusions are unaffected. Educational Philosophy and Theory published the following correction to Arday's 2021 paper, attempting to break the chain, reimagining inclusive pedagogy and decolonizing the curriculum within the academy. Bitches can just put buzzwords together and get free fame and recognition. That's crazy. A correlation has been made to clarify the relationship between the study presented in this article and a prior study, Arday 2018, that utilized similar methodologies, which in turn were based on Mimon's 2016 study. The corrections have been made to the methodology section of the article, paragraphs 1, 3 through 5, citing Mimon 2016 and Arday 2018, pages 303 to 304. So this other article had to edit its shit because it was citing both Mimon and Arday, but Arday's was just a plagiarization of Mimon's. And they're saying even though his was a plagiarization of Mimon's, where was it? The editor-in-chief was satisfied by Arday adding the citations, stating the scientific conclusions are unaffected. The scientific conclusions would be affected, would they not? Because instead of having two studies that reproduce each other's conclusions, you have one study that did it and then another study that plagiarized the first. So it's not a real study. What do you mean by this? This is explicitly why current academia is utterly fake and bullshit. 100%. What even is academia anymore except a nepotistic bunch of liars using the taxpayers' own wealth against them? Academia is basically communist foot soldier training camps where they don't teach you anything about how to get real jobs and how to actually use critical thinking. They basically teach you how to screech and use identity shields in order to deflect all criticism ever. Once again, the editorial note appears to treat plagiarism as an issue of missing references. How much of Arday's work is like this? On his Cambridge University faculty webpage, Arday lists 10 publications under the heading Principal and Recent Publications. Entries range from the year 2018, the year he published his first paper, to 2023, the year he moved to Cambridge. These are apparently the publications that he believes represent his best work, in recognition of which he was awarded a chair professorship at Cambridge. I'll go through the papers one by one. 1. Understanding Race and Educational Leadership in Higher Education, Exploring the Black and Ethnic Minority Experience, Management in Education, 2018. Arday interviewed 3 BME, Black and Ethnic Minority, academics in senior leadership positions within higher education in the UK. The 3 individuals were selected because of their convenient accessibility and proximity to the researcher. Arday asked them to reflect on and write about their experiences of negating racism within the academy. This short paper quotes and summarizes the responses and asserts that racism is a serious problem in academia. Copy leaks did not flag any instances of plagiarism. He interviewed only 3 people, and people that he admits he only spoke to because of convenient accessibility and proximity to the researcher. So he interviewed his friends who would already agree with his premise. And his friends also possibly have incredible embellishments in their stories, much like he does, because he is no longer a reliable narrator. Number 2, dismantling power and privilege through reflexivity, negotiating normative whiteness, what the fuck does that mean? The Eurocentric curriculum and racial microaggressions within the academy, Whiteness and Education, 2018. In Arday's own words from the abstract, this paper employs a critical race theory storytelling method, which operates as a counter-narrative in attempting to conceptualize my own professional experiences of negotiating normative whiteness. Is negotiating normative whiteness just having to prove your bullshit claims aren't the lies that they actually are? Is it normative whiteness and microaggressions within the academy to ask you for proof of your shit? Because that seems to be what it is in your words. The narratives proffered demonstrate the subtle but powerful ways in racism unfolds within the academy and the nuanced everyday forms of racism that persist against a backdrop of whiteness. Arday states that when a white colleague of his, quote, Debbie, committed microaggressions against him, he came up with a plan to collate evidence of her wrongdoing. He expounds, within me, a confidence emerged knowing that I would one day have my day of reckoning where I would be able to recite every racial microaggression I had encountered from Debbie and her colleagues, thereby becoming empowered rather than disempowered. So he's admitting to having, like, wet dream fantasies of getting this woman fired for the perceived microaggressions he thinks she's doing. CopyLeaks finds 5 cases of apparent plagiarism on 2 different sources. Arday lifts material from a 2012 paper by Nicola Rollick published in the International Journal of Qualitative Studies and Education. He says here, some verbatim copying, remember yellow is direct copy-paste, some verbatim copying following the structure of Rollick, verbatim copying and minor word changes, verbatim copying and paraphrasing. Arday also borrows from a 2010 article by Payne Geraldo, The Role of Critical Race Theory in Higher Education, published in The Vermont Connection. Although there is a reference to Geraldo 2010, there is no indication of verbatim copying of the extent of paraphrasing in the passage. Number 3, attempting to break the chain, reimagining inclusive pedagogy and decolonizing the curriculum within the Academy, Educational Philosophy and Theory, 2021. This paper was already flagged by Dave Harris, as discussed above. The editor-in-chief of the journal seemed to acknowledge that it was shot through with plagiarism, but allowed Arday to add references to the copied sources. I don't really understand. I mean, like, I do, because these people are just prioritizing this guy based on his race, because he clearly has no merits with which to be here. But the fact that he can just add sources to direct plagiarism, and that is not the way things work, is just like, why? Stop it. Stop doubling down, bro. Number 4, No One Can See Me Cry, Understanding Mental Health Issues for Black and Minority Ethnic Staff in Higher Education, 2022. Arday describes this as a study that utilizes the narratives of 40 BME, Black and Minority Ethnic, academic and professional university staff, to examine the impact of negotiating racial inequality and discrimination at university and the impact upon mental health. Subjects were a, quote, convenience sample, recruited on social media and through personal networking. They were interviewed and asked to fill out a questionnaire. See, if it was recruited on social media, I'd be like, you're probably gonna get a lopsided amount of people who already believe in this gobbledygook, right? Rather than just a spread of regular people mixed in there. But then they say personal networking, and I'm like, okay, so these are just people who already agree with his entire premise and conclusion, and it's obviously going to point towards the thing that he wants it to. That's not how you do sampling! The paper contains no data analysis of any kind. Based on his personal impression, Arday identifies 2 broad interrelated themes as barriers to accessing mental health services. 1 being personal and environmental factors, and 2, relationship between service user and healthcare provider situated around power and hierarchy. He supports his conclusions by quoting individual subjects at length. CopyLeaks finds only a minor instance of plagiarism. 2 sentences describing Russell Group universities, page 86, are lifted verbatim from Wikipedia. How in the fuck are you writing papers as a fake PhD professor and you are copy-pasting from fucking Wikipedia? Anyone that, like, greenlit, and especially anyone that doubled down in defending this guy, should also lose their credentials. Because clearly their credentials also mean fucking nothing if this is what they're willing to defend. However, Dave Harris notices something that is difficult to explain. Arday quotes a 38-year-old Latin American academic talking about her struggles learning English. She uses many of the same words as an Asian undergraduate subject quoted in Arday's 2018 paper, Understanding Mental Health. He's not even actually interviewing people. He's just making shit up. These people aren't even real. That's crazy. These subjects cannot be the same person. In 2022, one was a 38-year-old Latin American, while the other was an Asian in her 20s. And again, the yellow is direct copy-paste, the green is paraphrase. So this was Arday in 2018. As a student who is a recent immigrant, my understanding of English is improving daily. As a result, sometimes I struggle to articulate clearly and accurately what I would like to say to the healthcare professionals provided at university. For this reason, I prefer not to discuss my psychological issues as they will misjudge what I am saying and then heavily medicate me. Female, Asian, UG 4, page 14. If you're going to a university in an English-speaking country where you're expected to know English in order to do things, and you're complaining because there's not a psychologist that can speak your language, you need to get the fuck out! Learn English or fucking leave! So Arday plagiarizing himself in 2022. As someone relatively new to the United Kingdom, my understanding of English is improving daily. Despite my improvements, I still struggle to converse and make sense sometimes of what others are saying. Sometimes I struggle to articulate clearly and accurately what I would like to say to the healthcare professionals provided at university. I am aware of the potential manipulation of my words and meanings, and so sadly, to avoid a wrong diagnosis, I prefer not to discuss my psychological issues, as my biggest fear is being heavily medicated, which would mean potentially not being able to work and having my visa revoked. Female Latin American, female academic, 38, page 95. Yeah, these people aren't fucking real. In the corrected version of Understanding Mental Health, Arday removed the words and then heavily medicate me. The quote in his 2022 paper remains unchanged. Let me just reword some of these older quotes. Maybe no one will notice that these aren't real people that I claim to have interviewed. Number 5, what do we know about Black and minority ethnic participation in UK higher education, social policy, and society 2022? Arday is one of 3 corresponding authors. The paper is essentially an opinion piece which argues that progress towards race equality in UK universities has been hampered by white-centric discourses which continue to identify BAME, Black and minority ethnic students, as staff as other. The paper does not present or analyze any data. CopyLeaks did not find any plagiarism. No plagiarism, just I made it the fuck up! Number 6, Protocol for Black Student Wellbeing Study, a multi-site qualitative study on the mental health and well-being experiences of Black UK university students. The corresponding, i.e. principal author of this 5-page paper is Nikasi Stoll. Arday is one of 6 non-corresponding authors. According to the paper's contributors note, NS Nikasi Stoll conceived, designed, and wrote the protocol. SH, HL, and NCB were involved in the design, supervision, and contributed to the final manuscript. YY, DS, and JA, Jason Arday, contributed to the final manuscript. This suggests that Arday's contribution was minimal at most. CopyLeaks found no plagiarism. I like how these people were so non-contributive that they were just named by their initials instead of their full names. Kind of crazy. Number 7, more to prove and more to lose, race, racism, and precarious employment in higher education, a British Journal of Sociology of Education 2022. Arday interviewed and administered questionnaires to 18 staff of color at 10 universities, asking about their experiences with precarious employment. As with his previous studies, subjects were a, quote, convenience sample recruited through, quote, recommendations among staff of color. Although the paper includes a section titled Data Analysis, the analysis appears to have involved Arday reading the subject's responses and then drawing conclusions. Arday presents a flowchart to illustrate his, quote, findings. As noted, the findings are based entirely on his own subjective interpretation of the interviews, with no statistical analysis of any kind. And he's got a flowchart here that says systemic racism leads to exploitation, dehumanization, and gendered racism. Job insecurity leads to financial insecurity, lack of work-life balance, poor mental health, and transience. And then just lack of career progression in general, I suppose. There's no other possible conclusions. It's gotta be systemic racism. Another literal source, I made it the fuck up. It came to me in a dream. CopyLeaks failed to spot any plagiarism, but Dave Harris points out that the paragraph describing the study's procedure is almost identical to that in Arday's 2018 paper, Understanding Mental Health, which in turn was lifted from Mimon et al. 2016, and Mimon is not cited anywhere in Arday's 2022 paper. Number 8, COVID-19 and higher education, the times they are a-changin', Educational Review 2022. This is not a research paper, but the introduction to a special issue on COVID and higher education. Arday briefly summarizes the contributions to the special issue. CopyLeaks found no plagiarism. Number 9, same storm, different boats, the impact of COVID-19 on Black students and academic staff in the UK and US higher education. Higher Education 2022. You know what's really funny? How all of this COVID nonsense, the conspiracy theorists were proven true, right? It was a lab leak thing. Fucking Ouchie Fauci was directly responsible for having the research going on and also knew about the outbreak, right? Ouchie Fauci knew about the chances of miscarriage. Ouchie Fauci knew about all of the heart issues that it could give you, right? He knew all of this. And do you guys remember that during this COVID madness, there were some places, I can't remember if the one in particular I'm thinking of was like Seattle or fucking Portland, somewhere in like Oregon or Washington State. They were just like, well, in order to combat health equity, we're going to prioritize blacks and minorities for getting the COVID vaccines. White people, they can wait. And everyone was like, what the fuck? What the fuck? Like, if this was an actual emergency, would you not just give it to everyone equally? Now, knowing everything we do about the horrendous side effects, could those places in their left-leaning communistic ideologies been committing another Tuskegee experiment? They're just like, well, let's give it to these guys first, because, you know, who cares? Arday is one of 2 corresponding authors on this paper. The authors recruited 18 black staff members and 25 black students at universities in the US and the UK. Participants engaged in semi-structured interviews and focus groups to explore their lived experiences related to the COVID pandemic. The authors conclude that analysis revealed that black students and staff experienced COVID-19 against the backdrop of racism. There's no systematic data analysis of any kind. CopyLeaks found no plagiarism. Taking personal anecdotes as overarching average fact, crazy. The corresponding author of this paper is Chantel Jessica Lewis. Arday is the non-corresponding author. According to the abstract, the authors use autoethnography, i.e. self-reports about their lives. Autoethnography, by the way. To discuss their lived experiences of navigating the politics of neurodiversity and neurotypical hegemony in UKHE, UK higher education. As black sociologists, in this way, they grapple with racism and ableism in the context of value, meritocracy, and elitism. Oh boy. There is no systemic analysis of any kind. I'm so shocked. CopyLeaks found no plagiarism. He made it the fuck up. Is Arday a real scholar? Well, how do you determine who a real scholar is, you know? It's like... as noted, Arday highlights 10 papers as representing his most important work. The chart below indicates for each paper whether it A, contains plagiarism, and B, fails to employ scholarly methods, and or C, was not actually written by Arday. Number 1, no data or scientific analysis. He interviews a convenient sample of 3 subjects, quotes responses, and describes subjective impression. Paper 2, extensive plagiarism, and describes own experiences with alleged racism. Number 3 paper, the entire paper is based on plagiarism. Number 4, procedures taken from another source without attribution, minor plagiarism. At least one subject's response appears to be fabricated. And also, no data, interviews a convenient sample of 40 subjects, quotes responses, and describes subjective impression. Paper number 5 is an opinion piece, so there's no data or scientific analysis. And he is 1 out of 3 corresponding authors, so minimal contributions. Paper number 6, also minimal contributions. He is 1 out of 6 non-corresponding authors. Contributors' notes suggest little or no real contribution. Paper number 7, procedures are taken from another source without attribution, as well as there's no data or scientific analysis, saying interviews a convenient sample of 18 subjects, quotes responses, and describes subjective interpretation. Number 8 paper, not a research paper, it's an introduction to a special issue. Paper number 9, interviews a convenient sample of 43 subjects, quotes responses, and describes subjective impression. Once again, no data or scientific analysis. Paper 10, additionally, no scientific analysis, describes personal experiences with autoethnography. And he is also a non-corresponding author on the paper, didn't even write this one. When you take away the work that is plagiarized or not otherwise written by Arday, there's essentially nothing resembling real scholarship. There is no indication that Arday is familiar with even elementary statistics. His research involves reporting his own experiences of alleged racism, or having conversations with people and providing subjective commentary. So instead of pretending to be a scholar, he could have just been a streamer, man. The cover-up, Jason Arday was hired by Cambridge explicitly to advance the cause of racial diversity. So they admit that he was a DEI hire. They admit they didn't care about his qualifications or contributions, or if anything was true, they just wanted him because he's black. Jason Arday was hired by Cambridge explicitly to advance the cause of racial diversity. When he joined the university in 2023, the official announcement included the following quote by Pro Vice Chancellor for Education, Bhaskar Veera. Jason Arday is an exceptional scholar of race, inequality, and education. He will contribute significantly to Cambridge's research in this area and to addressing the underrepresentation of people from socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds, especially those from Black, Asian, and other minority ethnic communities. Remember, this is Britain, so this guy saying Asian isn't talking about Japanese and Chinese, who are also regularly disenfranchised because of their race. They're talking about Indians and Pakistanis and the like. We are making extensive efforts in this regard, including the expansion of the Get in Cambridge program, which provides financial support to address systemic disadvantages and the lack of social and educational capital, which often constrains the ability of minority ethnic students to continue with their education. A great deal remains to be done, and Jason's expertise will inform and enhance these ongoing endeavors. Translated, this is just a bunch of commie gobbledygook. We're hiring this guy we know isn't qualified, and we don't care that he's not qualified, because the more unqualified people we hire, the more damage we can do to these institutions, and the better our cattle class will be to rule over in the future. The head of the Faculty of Education, Hilary Kremen, told the Times of London that hiring Arday was proof of the university's commitment to tackling existing inequalities, and she provided the following statement. Not only is Jason Arday a world-class scholar, he also brings a wealth of experience that can help us to take forward our efforts to widen participation at all levels. Hopefully, it is becoming increasingly clear that with concerted effort and a genuine commitment to change, those barriers that still exist either to working or studying at top universities can be overcome. There's no barriers if you actually want to do it. But if you're going to continuously hire people that don't deserve to be there and whose entire life and credentials are lies, you are not going to have any kind of credibility. No one is going to believe you. And you devalue everyone else who is credentialed from Cambridge, man. Like, what are we doing? Arday stated that he was coming to Cambridge to open doors to members of underrepresented groups. My work focuses primarily on how we can open doors to more people from disadvantaged backgrounds and truly democratize higher education. What a horrific phrase. Hopefully being in a place like Cambridge will provide me with the leverage to lead that agenda nationally and globally. In other words, hiring Arday was an overtly political act. Everyone involved, including Arday himself, understood that he was being recruited to promote the ideology of DEI and to increase the representation of certain groups. You can imagine how Vera, Kremen, and others felt when in June 2023, they received an email from Dave Harris's colleague alerting them to Arday's alleged plagiarism. If hiring Arday was proof of the university's commitment to tackling existing inequalities, what would it prove if the university placed him under investigation, let alone held him accountable if it turns out he engaged in wrongdoing? I have the correspondence between the tipster and the administration. Dr. Rhys Morgan, head of policy, governance, and integrity, replied as follows. As set out by the UK Research Integrity Office, universities are responsible for the research conducted using their facilities and resources or in their name. The University of Cambridge takes issues of research integrity very seriously, and we will always consider allegations relating to research conducted under its auspices in line with our policies. In this instance, the research that your concerns relate to was carried out before Professor Arday joined the university, and it would normally be for the institution at which the work was done to consider any research integrity concerns with a particular paper published in their name, as we do not consider it within our remit to investigate the paper to which you refer. That's crazy! They're just like, well, he didn't make these plagiarized and fake papers at our university, therefore we just accept them as fact. Don't worry about it, not our problem. Professor Kremen sent this reply. We remain immensely proud of Professor Arday's achievements and scholarship, and he has our full support. I can confirm that, having looked into your concerns about Professor Arday's work, I arranged a meeting between myself, Professor Arday, and my director of research. We discussed the paper in question and the circumstances under which the paper was written, which was clearly before Professor Arday was employed at Cambridge. During this meeting, Professor Arday said that he wanted to take the article down from the journal online platform in order to address concerns and to re-upload it. The journal has now enabled this, and Professor Arday is working on the changes. Instead of holding him accountable for plagiarizing and lying, they give him an opportunity to cover his fucking tracks. This is insane. This is insane, the level of privilege that you can attain if you are on the DEI side of things. Holy shit. We are very grateful for your detailed feedback on the article in question that has formed the basis of these revisions. During our meeting, Professor Arday spoke movingly about his ongoing experiences of direct and indirect racism, and the conditions that he was living in whilst the 2018 article was being prepared in 2016. At this time, he was in his early career and living away from home whilst dealing with significant health issues. Wasn't he also running like 30 marathons? The fuck are you talking about? From the perspective of the university, represented by Riz Morgan, any pre-2023 plagiarism was irrelevant. Well, he got here through plagiarism, but he's already here, so we can't get rid of him. That plagiarism that got him here is irrelevant. Don't look at it. Don't worry about it. It is difficult to understand this position. Arday was hired on the basis of his work. Surely the university would wish to know whether or how much of this work was fraudulent. For the Faculty of Education represented by Hillary Creeman, it was enough for Arday to state that he experienced direct and indirect racism and health issues to absolve him of responsibility. I sympathize with Arday for his health problems. I mean, were they even real? I know why the guy is saying this, right? Because whenever you're writing something about how someone is a nefarious fucking piece of shit, you kind of have to nudge in there like well, if it's true, I would feel bad. But it's like, I don't believe it, dude. However, it is unclear how illness or alleged racism can explain why he stole other people's work. And if he committed plagiarism in 2018, wouldn't the faculty want to know whether or not it was a one-off? Yes. Yes, they should. I have heard from multiple sources that Arday and or the university have sicked the law firm Carter Ruck on journalists or academics who raised questions about Arday. We did read that in the other articles, that is true. In any case, there are obvious questions about Arday's work and life story. The fact that literally no one at Cambridge has spoken about this publicly suggests that, at the very least, the administration has created an atmosphere of intimidation where people are afraid to express controversial ideas. It's not a controversial idea to call someone out for plagiarism and lying, especially if you have proof of a repeated pattern of this. This is consistent with the experience I wrote about a couple of months ago in Cambridge University's war on free speech. There are more than 1,000 black people in the UK with IQs over 140 who would be capable of doing serious work in the sociology of education. If Cambridge administrators wanted a black professor to serve as a role model for underrepresented minorities, they could have found someone qualified. Instead, they grabbed a random black person with an unvetted fairy tale backstory and almost nothing that resembles genuine scholarship. Because once again, like all of us anti-DEI people have been saying for ages, it has nothing to do with actually uplifting any kind of black people, any kind of minorities, any kind of woman, any kind of whatever ideology, identity they claim to be for. They don't actually care. What they care is getting unqualified and inept people into these positions so that they have better DEI foot soldiers. They don't want the actually intelligent black men who deserve to be at Cambridge to get into Cambridge, because those black men are capable of independent thought and might disagree with some of the tenets of DEI. They don't want that. They want the good little foot soldiers they can count on continuously lying and hiding things for them. And what better way to get someone to continuously lie and hide things for you so you can keep doing the work than someone who is already neck deep in lies and plagiarism? When evidence of the black person's long history of plagiarism is brought to their attention, they excuse it on the basis that he was the victim of direct and indirect racism. In their view, he cannot be asked to follow the same rules that we expect school children to understand. And this is the exact same kind of racism that the left exhibits when they talk about how black people don't know how to use computers and black people are too inept to get IDs in order to vote. It is the exact same kind of like, we're going to be racist, but we're the good people, so our racism actually good. I know it sounds silly to say that leftists are the real racist, but by hiring Jason Arday and refusing to investigate credible accusations against him, isn't Cambridge making a statement that the only way to have black professors is to abandon all standards? This is exactly what they are saying, and in addition to that, this is exactly the point of both affirmative action and DEI. They are saying that they need to hire people who are only inept. And I think, since these are just communist gobbledygook people, there are probably a contingent of them that genuinely believe that no black professors could exist unless they lowered the standards. But more reasonably, I would say that a lot of them have that true belief of, we need to give them an extra hand up, and that's not favoritism or racism because more white supremacy. They have like fallen hook, line, and sinker for a lot of these communist gobbledygook phrases, and they think that they will be a part of the same class of people that, say, Hassan Piker will be a part of. There's a conflict between what universities such as Cambridge call DEI and something else they claim to value, namely free speech. DEI demands that we accept the fiction that people like Jason Arday, who are hired because they tick certain identity and ideology boxes, are just as qualified as scholars selected on the basis of academic merit. But if people are allowed to speak freely, they might point out that this is false. The Cambridge administration resolves the dilemma by siding with DEI against free speech. Faculty know what is likely to happen to them if they speak out about the Arday situation. This is why the administration has been able to bury the story for 3 years. The upshot is that we lose both free speech and equality. Equality means treating people the same without regard to immutable characteristics like race, and that is not what is happening at Cambridge. Cambridge is investigating Jason Arday after Telegraph revealed his false book claims. Professor also accused of copying parts of his PhD thesis from another student. The University of Cambridge has launched an investigation into Professor Jason Arday after the Telegraph revealed he falsely claimed to have published a book. A Cambridge spokesman said the university has begun an investigation following new information about Professor Arday's academic qualifications and honorary appointments. Professor Arday, who is a professor of sociology of education, has also been the subject of plagiarism claims after the Telegraph reported that he had been accused of copying parts of his PhD thesis from another student. University said there remained a number of ongoing complaints regarding academic misconduct, which were being handled in line with its misconduct in research policy. While we were fully aware of the public commentary and concerns around this matter, it remains vital that any process is thorough and adheres to both university policies and employment law, the spokesman said. They ignored this for years. Always complain. What does Asmongold say? Always chimp out? That's what works? We also fully recognize that there is a person at the center of the situation, and we continue to support him. Why would you say that? Why would you fucking say that? Professor Arday repeatedly claimed that he was the author of a book called Being Young, Black and Male, Challenging the Dominant Discourse, which was said to explore stereotypes about black masculinity. The book was listed in his biography description in published essays, as well as promotional material for speaking events, and was attributed to the Palgrave Macmillan Publishing House. In reality, it never made it to the shelves and was abandoned by the publisher several years ago. He just can't stop making shit up! The revelation raises questions over his employment at the University of Cambridge. To apply for a professorship at Cambridge, applicants need to submit an extensive portfolio of work, which includes a complete bibliography of essays, journals, and book chapters. This is, again, how you know the people doing DEI hires do not care about merit. They most likely did not even check any of these sources. They just said, wow, he has a very quality resume. Let's just take this guy. It's perfect. Jesus College, where Professor Arday is a fellow, has also launched its own process alongside the university's investigation. A college spokesman said parallel to the University of Cambridge's investigation into Professor Arday, Jesus College is launching its own process. Professor Arday's college fellowship is linked to his university role, and we will fully support the university. Professor Arday remains a fellow during this process, so we recognize that this is a very difficult time for him and his family, and ask that they are treated with compassion and respect. About the author, Dr. Jason Arday is an assistant professor in sociology at Durham University in the Department of Sociology. Jason is a visiting research fellow at The Ohio State University, we know that's fake, in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, a research associate at Nelson Mandela. What? Is that also in Ohio? The accusations that Professor Arday had allegedly plagiarized the work of another academic made international headlines, including in the US. After analysis of his PhD thesis showed more than 180 separate passages were identical or near identical to the other student's thesis. In recent days, Professor Arday has put his apparent plagiarism down to autism, saying he absorbs information through mimicry. This is so fucking stupid. Anyone who believes this is a retard. Like, this is definitely a way that some autistics will learn, but they are also smart enough to not pass it off as their own work to just one-for-one plagiarize in an academic paper. This is fucking insanity. Just once again, using someone's condition as a shield for criticism, which makes me question his autism in general. Does he even have it? That sounds fake as fuck. He has admitted that a claim about running 600 miles in 6 days for charity was wrong, saying that it had taken 12 days. He has accepted that he did not raise £5.5 million for charity alone, as he has said in the past, but had instead been a part of a syndicate of about 100 people, none of whom he can name because he had signed a non-disclosure agreement. Yeah, I just don't believe any of that. The universities of Glasgow and Ohio State have denied claims by Professor Arday that he had been a visiting professor at their institutions. It was revealed by the Telegraph that Professor Arday has incorrectly named to be a visiting professor at the Nelson Mandela University in South Africa. Man, he was really getting around. He was like some prestigious professor in all of these countries' universities. He's just getting around, man. On the Cambridge Faculty of Education page, he claims to be a visiting professor at the university in the city of Queberha, formerly Port Elizabeth. Maybe they should rechange the name. That's way easier to say. However, a university spokesman said Professor Arday had no formal affiliation with the institution and had served as an adjunct professor on a fixed-term association that ended in November 2025. This is like everything about this man is made up. We're gonna find out in like a week that he's not even real. He was just like some other college student's AI project. In 2019, Professor Arday published his book, Cool Britannia and Multi-Ethnic Britain, Uncorking the Champagne Supernova. Palgrave Macmillan, an academic and trade publishing company, accepted Professor Arday's proposal for the book, but did not publish it. Despite the book not being publicly available, he continued to promote himself as its author. While he was working at Durham University in 2020, he uploaded the title of the book to the university's online repository, an online archive to which academics can upload their research and other work. He uploaded the title of the book, but he didn't upload any of its contents, especially if the publishing house accepted it. Why would he not get it published after that? Like, that's fishy as fuck. Did the book actually exist, or did he only have a title? What did he send to Palgrave Macmillan to get it accepted for publishing? There's so many questions. Because, like, it couldn't have been just fucking blank, otherwise it wouldn't have been accepted, right? It was just plagiarized. Maybe. It's just plagiarized from other books. I don't know. Man, however, he did not upload any files or content from the book. The entry said, manuscript in preparation, suggesting that the work had not yet been completed. His profile page on the university's website listed the book under his publication section, with the caveat that it was forthcoming. This was updated in 2023 to manuscript submitted for publication before the page was deleted. Palgrave Macmillan confirmed to the Telegraph that the project had been abandoned several years ago, although a spokesman would not comment on why. A Durham University spokesman said it is standard practice for academics to list forthcoming books or manuscripts on their web pages. It can take some time for works to appear in print. We are dependent on authors updating us on the status of their work. As it is over 4 years since Jason left Durham, any further questions need to be directed to the author. Professor Arday did not respond for a request to comment at the time of this article being released, which I'm not surprised. All he's doing is covering his tracks at every chance he gets. Professor Jason Arday has resigned from the University of Cambridge after the Telegraph revealed he falsely claimed to have published a book. In a statement on Wednesday evening, Arday said he was stepping down with immediate effect from his position at the university and at Jesus College, citing the unrelenting level of public scrutiny. I didn't do nothing wrong, but I'm resigning because the scrutiny, it's just too much. Cambridge previously said Arday was the victim of a vile campaign to undermine his credibility, but faced a staff revolt over its refusal to re-examine his academic credentials. Investigation came hours after the Telegraph revealed Arday's false claim to have published a book. In 2019, Arday published Cool Britannia and Multi-Ethnic Britain, Uncorking the Champagne Supernova, which examined 1990s British culture through the lens of ethnic minority experiences. Palgrave Macmillan confirmed to the Telegraph that the project had been abandoned several years ago, although a spokesman would not comment on why. I want to know why. A Durham University spokesman said it was standard practice for academics to list forthcoming books or manuscripts on their web pages. Simon & Schuster, which is set to publish Professor Arday's memoirs later this month, had claimed on its website that he had previously published 3 books of academic work. After the Telegraph contacted the publishing company with the revelations about being young, black, and male, it was changed to 2 books. What a sentence, bro. David Harris, professor emeritus at Plymouth Marjon University, who first raised concerns about Arday's work in 2023, that said any reasonable person would have concluded from Arday's claims that he had published the book. He said that academics often listed forthcoming work, but usually made it clear it was not yet published, and that Professor Arday's claim had fallen on the naughty side of bluffing. What a cute way to call fraud. The naughty side of bluffing. If he included this work in his portfolio, then he was applying to be a professor, or when he was applying to be a professor at Cambridge, then he has serious questions to answer. It means he could have been given the job under false pretenses, he told the Telegraph. Arday also claimed between 2019 and 2023 that he had published a book titled Considering Racialized Context in Education Using Reflective Practice and Peer Mentoring to Support Black and Ethnic Minority Educators. The title was included in his list of published work in Cool Britannia and Multi-Ethnic Britain alongside being Young Black and Male book. It was also listed on his staff profile on Durham University's website as being published in 2019 by the Routledge Publishing Company. He was still claiming that the book was published when he took up the post as Cambridge's youngest Black professor in March 2023. It was not until December 2023 that the Durham website was finally altered to say the book was in press, meaning it had passed peer review and been accepted for publication, but had not been published yet. Miss Foxwoman, a second fake book has hit the stream. I mean, I guess if you lie about having one book published and you don't get caught, why not just make up more books? Who's gonna check it? There's all the fake books now. It remains unclear whether the book was ever published. Arday listed the book himself on Amazon in 2024, but it included no cover image and was only available to be pre-ordered for delivery in 2030. He listed a book with no available image in 2024, saying that you can pre-order it for 2030. This guy is even beating the Chinese at the scam games. That's fucking crazy. If anyone pre-ordered that, they should have their voting rights taken away. Holy shit, dude. That is insanity. Several book-selling websites also list the title, but it is never available to buy, and the listings include no cover images. They also give different dates for when it was published, either saying 2023 or 2024, or that it will be published in 2030. Schrodinger's book about racism, it may or may not exist, but you're not allowed to question it, you bigot. Routledge and Professor Arday have been contacted for comment. How are there still more fake things coming out? That's actually fucking insane, dude. I'm losing my mind. Colin Wright had a tweet here. Jason Arday, the Cambridge professor exposed for plagiarism and fabricating major aspects of his life story, has resigned. According to leading AI writing detection software Pangram, Arday's resignation letter is fully AI generated with high confidence. Man couldn't even resign without using AI to write it fucking for him. Dear colleagues, it is with profound sadness that I write to resign with immediate effect from my position at the University of Cambridge and Jesus College. When I accepted the extraordinary honor of becoming professor of sociology at Cambridge, it was, without question, the greatest professional privilege of my life. Yes, because you didn't belong there. You were a fraud from the ground fucking up, dude. Holy shit. To become the youngest Black professor in the university's history was something I could scarcely have imagined as a child growing up with a diagnosis of autism, unable to speak until I was 11 years old. The response from so many people across the world was overwhelming. Thousands celebrated not simply my appointment, but what it represented. That talent, perseverance, and hope can triumph over even the greatest adversity. What adversity? People not checking if you plagiarized other people's papers? I mean, I guess that's an adversity if you're a duplicitous cunt. Like, come on, dude. Stolen autistic valor. It has been the privilege of my life to teach my students, to learn alongside them, and to witness their curiosity, kindness, and ambition. Until that curiosity is asking, hey bro, where are your sources? Where are these books you supposedly published? I can't find any of this shit. How did you almost beat a world record in running with a broken leg? Not that kind of curiosity. They have given me far more than I could have ever given them. Sadly, the years since my appointment have also been marked by an unrelenting level of public scrutiny and personal attack. While criticism is an inevitable part of academic life, what I've experienced has gone far beyond scholarly disagreement. The relentless accusations, speculation, and public commentary have taken a profound toll on me and those that I love. This guy was fucking taken out by Clinton-esque assassins. He was supposed to be a martyr so that now you can no longer question any academic that may have even the slightest tan on their skin. You can't question them. They might kill themselves, you bigot. You just have to accept all of their fraud. I have tried to continue because I believe deeply in the values of higher education and rigorous scholarship, and in the transformative power of universities. I have tried because of my students, my colleagues, and the countless people who have written to tell me that my journey gave them hope. But there comes a point where the personal cost becomes too great. I have a family. You're not real. This man isn't real. 100% AI generated. AI detection tools practically never flag human written text as AI generated. I don't know if that's true or not. I've seen people post on Twitter that there are like false positives sometime. But I have no idea. I've never used AI to detect these things, but I would probably err on the side of it's probably not perfect. Pangram is very good, though not perfect, at flagging text that is fully AI generated. Arday's resignation letter was therefore almost certainly written by AI. I would believe it 100% in this case, simply because this guy has lied about absolutely everything. He's lied about everything and has written literally nothing, so why would he write his own resignation letter? I'd be willing to believe it here because of the pattern this man has exhibited. Who wrote this? Evaluating the reliability of AI detection tools in higher education. Pangram is this yellow bar one up here, I guess, for fully AI generated. It's a bit less for hybrid and humanized. AI checkers may be spotty, but his track record is against him. Yeah, exactly. That's a very good way to put it. The Jason Arday debacle is becoming a national scandal. Jason Arday's story is becoming a national scandal. What began as a vaguely amusing parable of our times. It's not vaguely amusing that this guy is basically given all of this recognition and accolades for everything being fake. A schadenfreude-filled expose of the left's remarkable gullibility has now morphed into something far more sinister. If you believed that this was gullibility on the part of the left, you do not understand where we are. You do not understand that all of these people, in hiring him, in maintaining him as a professor, in circling the wagons and supporting him after the fraud was outed, that's not the left's remarkable gullibility. That's them exactly knowing what they're doing. They're admitting to you that there is no meritocracy. They purposefully hire people like this based on their immutable characteristic. And if they got there fraudulently, that doesn't matter. Most of them got into these positions fraudulently. So why would they care about one of their own doing the same thing all of them have done? This is how they usurp the institutions. And thinking that they are all gullible idiots is not the way to go about it. Which is why I still say sometimes, while the difference between the actions of the useful idiot and the malicious liar are basically the same, there's not going to be a huge difference there. It's still important to point out the difference between those two classes of people. Otherwise, you'll be thinking everyone is simply a gullible lefty who thinks too good of the world, and that will put you in a losing position. For now, we learned that Scotland Yard attempted to silence a journalist who tried to expose Arday's claims. In fact, they spent 4 months investigating him. Even by the appallingly low standards of the Met, it is a startling revelation. When Jack Grove, a reporter for Times Higher Education, emailed Arday a series of questions about his academic record, officers told him to stop contacting the professor because his mental health had been affected. Arday also hired the law firm Carter Ruck, who doesn't come cheap, who claimed Grove's apparent attack on their client may be racially motivated. Can you imagine just having like a get-out-of-jail-free card in your pocket for absolutely everything? Someone saw you committing a crime? No, they didn't. They're a racist. Someone caught you plagiarizing your PhD papers? No, they didn't. They're a racist. Someone caught you pretending to publish books that never existed? No, they didn't. They're a racist. Let's be really clear about what this means. The UK's biggest police force attempted to shut down a journalistic investigation, apparently because the man at the center of it played the race card. As Grove himself states, "I was just doing my job. Journalists should be free to ask questions of anyone, even star professors." And yet, if we've learned anything from the Arday debacle, it is that asking questions is beyond the pale for the powers that be. At best, you'll be accused of attempting to undermine black people who hold positions of influence. As a solidarity letter organized by the left-wing pressure group The Good Law Project recently alleged. At worst, it'll lead to phone calls from the old bill and legal threats from one of the country's most expensive law firms. This is insane. Once again, like I said when we read this journalist's account, so many journalists today are just disgusting prostitute propagandists. This guy was actually trying to investigate something that was fishy, to expose someone who is a fraud. And the police targeted the journalist for it. There is a reason that journalists were called prostitutes. Most of them are not willing to risk their skin like this guy was to investigate Arday. The more you learn about the Arday affair, the angrier you get. The sicker I get. Angry about Grove being investigated by the Met for just doing his job. Angry about the academics who should have been promoted instead. But most of all, angry about the craven capitulation of institution after institution when faced with the delusions of an apparent fanaticist who had only one true talent, an ability to exploit their virtue-signaling vanity. Jason Arday was not exploiting the academics. The academics, essentially, were exploiting him. They were elevating him in order to elevate their own status within their communist enclaves. That is how this works. They are the architects of this disaster. And it's not going to get any better until all of the academics in positions of power at these universities are removed. You cannot have communists teaching your kids. When doubts about Arday's academic record first emerged, his defenders cried racism. And yet, aren't the real racists those who seemingly hold diverse academics to lower standards? We've been saying this for ages, and it doesn't work, you know? Like, I mean, I do the same thing. Pointing out their hypocrisy is very cathartic, but it doesn't actually seem to really help, unfortunately. Because, like, they don't care when they're being hypocritical. They don't care when you point out the things that they believe are actually doing damage. That's the whole point. In 2023, the BBC ran a piece in which Hilary Creeman, head of Cambridge's education faculty, simpers in front of Arday on camera that we are so lucky to have you. She appears to view him as some sort of collectible, a trinket to be displayed so that no one can ever question the university's commitment to inclusion ever again. It is the soft bigotry of low expectations on full display. That's actually gross. That's actually really fucking gross. I don't understand why anyone would want to be seen that way, even. The same attitude seeps through almost every sycophantic media opportunity that Arday has been afforded over the recent years. Liberal interviewer after liberal interviewer lined up to coo over his confected life story, from raising millions for charity to running 600 miles in 6 days. But instead of asking basic questions to verify such objectively remarkable claims, they simply didn't consider it necessary to apply traditional journalistic standards to a neurodivergent person of color. We're not just talking about one or two soft soap interviews here. Arday was invited to be a guest editor on the Today program, appeared on Question Time, and on multiple occasions was a panelist on Sunday with Laura Kuenssberg. The clips from these appearances have been doing the rounds on social media in the past week, and what shines through in each of them is just how transparently imbecilic Arday is. And yet no one had the balls to say the emperor had no clothes. When being humored by Krishnan Guru Murthy on Channel 4's Ways to Change the World, Arday volunteers that he would take a thread and needle and I'd interweave love into our society. Even AI would struggle to generate such meaningless slop, and yet Guru Murthy nods along earnestly as if exposed to profundity for the first time. During a BBC Radio 4 debate about the future of monarchy, Arday makes the completely baseless claim that 70% of Brits live below the breadline. Again, this goes entirely unchallenged. He knows that the monarchy is just ornamental at this point, right? He knows that the monarch, if his claim was correct, which it's not, he would know that that's not the fault of the monarchy in current year, right? The Good Law Project letter, which was signed by figures including Zach Polanski, what an interesting last name, John McDonnell and Clive Lewis, argues that universities must ensure that excellence is protected and that every scholar is judged on the merit of their work, not the color of their skin. What an odd thing to say when you're defending a fraudulent person because of the color of their skin. I couldn't agree more, said the author of this article to the statement from the Good Law Project letter. Except that isn't what Arday's defenders have been doing. They've been demanding less of him simply because of his race. By promoting Arday as an example of black excellence, they're also doing a colossal disservice to the many minority academics who truly deserve such a label. Yes, but again, that's part of the point. They don't actually want academics. They don't actually want intelligent people who can do work and do research and do studies. They want easily controllable people. And who else is more easily controllable than someone with the fakest list of fake credentials that have ever been faked? I'm still in two minds as to how to view Arday himself. Is he a fool or is he a knave? Probably both, in all honesty. But the bigger question is how so many of our most powerful institutions, whether Cambridge University, the BBC, or now the Metro Police, were taken in by such an obvious charlatan. They weren't taken in, especially considering how they closed the ranks when they were alerted to the fraud. They don't care. Zach Polanski is the head of the Green Party in Britain, bored David Paulden. His highest claim to fame is having worked as a hypnotist promising to give people bigger booba. How the fuck is he the head of a political party? Unless, of course, they weren't. Perhaps they believed all along that Arday was a fantasist, but were either too scared to say as much or considered him a useful idiot for the identity politics agenda that they are now beholden to. Yes, this last part. Exactly this. From everything we have read and everything we know, that is exactly the case. Who hired the ridiculous Jason Arday at Cambridge? Eric Rasmussen has the names. And they all look exactly how you would expect them to. Holy shit. This guy down here is like the only outlier, but he's squinting. Jason Arday was appointed Professor of Sociology of Education in its Faculty of Education at Cambridge University in 2023. Since then, he's been found to be an incredible liar and a miserable scholar. Some line items. Number 1, he says he starred in ITV's 7 Up documentary series, but the BBC says he didn't. How is there still new things? We're like 8 articles deep. How are there still new things this guy has lied about? Arday claimed to have worked on projects abroad for the charity WaterAid, which said they never sent volunteers abroad. What the fuck is WaterAid? There's still new things! I know of other amazing items. Someone on X has a 37-item list, though in the day since it was written, more came out. But I didn't intend to write on Arday, but those who appointed him. Arday himself resigned on August 5th, and pictures of the people involved in his appointment are at the start of this Substack. The Cambridge University Reporter number 6664, June 29th, 2022, and David Wooten tell us that the board that appointed Arday are Baroness Sally Morgan, Fitzwilliam, Professors Anup Nayak, Newcastle, Louise Archer, UCL, Joe Dillabur, CAM, I don't know what that is, Tim Harper, Magdalen, Michaelinos Zembailis, OU Cyprus, Karen Coates, Homerton, Martin Mills, UCL, Paul Ramchandani, Wolfson. I'm assuming these are all college names. This is not a lightweight panel. Zembailis has the most citations, all have a proper scholarly record in education, sociology, and history. So did they read the work? And if they did, how could they persuade themselves it was of the level appropriate for a Cambridge chair? Because once again, this is a DEI hire, they did not care. 2/3 of the board had to vote for Arday for the appointment to go through. Professor Hilary Creeman is head of the Faculty of Education and told the BBC that the board had been unanimous in recommending Arday. Pro-Vice Chancellor for the Education, Bhaskar Vera, was probably involved. Professor Phil Vickerman was Arday's thesis advisor. Arday was both a professor of Cambridge University and a fellow at Jesus College. He was elected by the members of the council, the master, the president, the senior tutor, the bursar, I don't know what the fuck a bursar is, and 12 fellows or emeritus fellows elected by the society. But without the participation of the 4 student members, Sonita Alienye, also referred to as Miss Sonita Alienye OBE, has been master since 2019. Below I include bio information on all these people. I also include email addresses I intend to email each. Here is my letter. Dear Professor X, I'm assuming he's just substituting the X for their name depending on who he's sending it to. I am writing in an effort to learn how Jason Arday was appointed as a professor at Cambridge University. I am a retired Indiana University economics professor with a pretty good vitae, best known for my book Games and Information published by Blackwell. I'm not first rate, but I went to Yale and MIT, and I've been a visiting scholar at Oxford Nuffield, Harvard Law twice, Harvard Econ, Yale Law, and Chicago Business. So I hope you will take me seriously. Did you vote in support of the hire? If so, how would you justify your decision? Did you read any of Arday's work? Did you know of his fanciful claims such as the 30 marathons? Do you regret your decision? Without knowing the answers, I and everybody else will believe that you have no justification for Arday's hire except his race, that you did not read his work, and that you care nothing about scholarly quality, and that you don't care about lying. He's not going to get a response to this. I still commend him for writing it, but it's like what a lot of people seem to not understand is that, yes, all of this DEI nonsense is just justifying hiring people based on immutable characteristics. It doesn't matter if they even read the work. They were going to take him anyways because he is a perfect DEI hire. And yes, of course they don't care about lying. This is what communists do. If a communist is talking, they are lying to you. I don't think Arday is a communist. I think he's just a fraudulent guy who wanted recognition and wanted accolade. I think all of these people that hired him are part of Marxist belief systems wanting to usher in cultural change. If you did oppose the hire, this is your chance to make that public. I myself would have resigned from the hiring committee if it were to recommend someone like this. I have included this letter on a Substack I have written at, and he links this. I'll be happy to append anything you may write on the affair. This may be your chief legacy. We like to think our articles and books are what will be remembered, but when someone Googles you in 50 years, it is this affair which will most likely come up. Baroness Sally Morgan became Fitzwilliam College's 9th Master on October 1st, 2019. Sally Morgan was born and went to school in Liverpool, and she is a Labour peer, worked for 8 years on 10 Downing Street, and was Minister for Women and Equalities. Minister for Women and Equalities, so she is also some kind of like fake daycare job. I am a social and cultural geographer who has specialisms in race, ethnicity, and migration, masculinities and social change, youth transitions and inequalities. I studied at the Center for Contemporary Cultural Studies, University of Birmingham, before undertaking research posts exploring the perpetrators of racist violence with Les Beck and Roger Hewitt, and research on sexuality in schooling. I held a lectureship in media and cultural studies at Liverpool John Moores University. The connections emerging between cultural studies and geography led me to undertake a funded PhD in human geography at Newcastle University, exploring young people, race, and whiteness. If this is talking about fucking Sally Morgan, bro, she probably immediately went home and masturbated after accepting this fraudulent guy for a professorship. I'm currently the Carl Manheim Professor of Sociology of Education at UCL IOE 2017 to now, and co-chair of the Center for Sociology and Education and Equity with Jessica Ringrose and Caroline Oliver. Their research seeks to understand educational identities and inequalities, particularly in relation to social class, gender, and race, / ethnicity across primary, secondary, higher, and informal learning contexts. I wonder what all of these people are going to bitch about once, like, white people are the de facto minorities in their own countries. Like, I know it's all, like, white people are already a global minority, right? But once white people are minorities in their own countries, what are these people gonna have to complain about? Because white people won't be in charge of that kind of power structure at that point. So who's going to be the ones committing the institutional racisms at that point? Once again, I know this is all blithering communist bullshit in order to try and trick people into going down this route. But it's still just baffling sometimes when you think about it, because it's like, how are you going to continue to convince people? Are you just expecting to have created the cultural transformation required that it won't matter? You won't need to lie anymore by that point? Like, sometimes I don't get it. I began my academic career as an ethnographer, more like ethnogrifter, true, during my doctorate, which I undertook in Canada at McGill University. At the start of my doctoral student trajectory, I sought to better understand how young people came to know about Indigenous human rights issues, and how non-Indigenous youth and teachers understood them as expressions of culture, society, knowledge, and power. I would very much like more explanation to what you're talking about, considering how many times we've been told, oh, it's okay that he raped a little girl, that's just his culture, you can't be a bigot, man, 10 hours of community service. I was also interested in the part played by social and cultural media popular knowledge forms, histories of colonialism and political culture in mediating these expressions. Professor Harper's research interests center on the history of modern Southeast Asia and the region's global connections. His first book, The End of Empire and the Making of Malaya, 1999, was a study of war, communist rebellion, and the achievement of independence in Malaya and Singapore. Sorry, I have no idea what Malaya is. Is that like what Malaysia used to be called? Since then, he has published with Christopher Bailey a 2-volume account of the Second World War and its aftermath in South and Southeast Asia, Forgotten Armies, 2004, and Forgotten Wars, 2007. Michaelinos Zembailis is a professor of educational theory and curriculum studies at the Open University of Cyprus and an honorary professor at the Nelson Mandela University in the Chair for Critical Studies and Higher Education Transformation. Literally every single one of these people has like a commie gobbledygook job description. None of these people know anything, nor do they do anything. They are just all agents of Marxist chaos. He has written extensively on emotion and affect in relation to social justice pedagogies, intercultural and peace education, human rights education, and citizenship education. His recent books include Psychologized Language in Education, Denaturalizing a Regime of Truth with Z. Beckerman, and Socially Just Pedagogies in Higher Education. Paul Ramchandani is Lego Professor of Play and Education Development and Learning at the University of Cambridge. You're telling me we have a Lego Professor of Play at the University of Cambridge, and you expect me to take you seriously as an institution? What the fuck are we doing here? What the actual fuck, Mr. Ramadama Chingdong? Lego Professor of Play. Is there supposed to be a TM there? Is this a trademarked professor position? Paul also works as a consultant child and adolescent psychiatrist in the UK National Health Service and was previously Professor of Child and Adolescent Mental Health at Imperial College London. He trained as a doctor in Southampton and then in public health at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine in London, and in child and adolescent mental health in Oxford. All right, like I'm not a professor, right? I'm not smart enough to like go to Cambridge or anything. Why are they specifically singling out tropical medicine? Shouldn't it just be medicine in general? Paul's research has focused on mental health, and he has a particular interest in the development of play and the prevention of emotional and behavioral problems in the early years of life. Martin is the former head of the School of Education at the University of Queensland, Australia. He is a fellow of the Academy of Social Sciences Australia and has held visiting professorships at King's College London, Roehampton, and Queen's Belfast. He is the immediate past president of the Australian Association for Research and Education. He holds an honorary professorship at the University of Queensland. And his most recent books are Reimagining Schooling for Education, Re-engaging Young People in Education, Learning from Alternative Schools, and The Politics of Differentiation in Schooling. He is an editor of Discourse, Studies in the Cultural Politics of Education. Martin is a former high school English history teacher. Well, he clearly did not learn anything from teaching history. Professor Hilary Creeman is a senior professor in the Faculty of Education. She co-chairs the Thrive Research Group, whose professors and researchers investigate human thriving in and through education. I hate fucking subversive language, chat. This includes topics such as well-being, peace education, conflict, equity, inclusion, and social justice. Sonita attended a comprehensive school before going to Fitzwilliam College in Cambridge. A career in radio followed, and she founded production company Something Else, which she led as chief executive from 1991 until 2009. This is literally just a list of why they accepted him and why he was the perfect candidate for their DEI nonsense. The only lesson from Jason Arday can be recognition that this is going on everywhere. This is the dissertation of a University of Maryland campus president. She stole someone else's dissertation and changed the name of the field. Maryland has known this for a year. Another college president plagiarized her dissertation. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Heidi M. Anderson went on to discriminate against white employees who had to do all the work while others got credit, a lawsuit says. This was in October of last year. College president and former chair of the American Association of State Colleges and Universities plagiarized extensively in her doctoral dissertation, a Daily Wire review found. Heidi M. Anderson is president of the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. For nearly 4 decades, she has climbed the academic ladder while producing an unremarkable amount of low-quality research. Now, a lawsuit from a former Eastern Shore professor threatens to cast Anderson's career into a startling new light. Donna Satterley alleges that under Anderson, low-skilled black faculty were hired based on their race and paid more than white faculty. The suit said whites were forced to do the work that black officials took credit for. A Daily Wire review suggested that it could be a pattern that began with her 1986 doctoral dissertation for Purdue University, which kicked off her academic career. I'm having flashbacks to like that Harvard University professor plagiarizing shit. I can't remember if it was even like the dean. I'm pretty sure it was the dean of Harvard. Portions of the dissertation which deal with the use of computers in pharmaceutical education appear to be repurposed an uncredited copy of a 1984 paper by Donna E. Larson, a professor of nursing, about the use of computers in nursing education, with simply the name of the field changed. The photos below show just the beginning of a lengthy section where Anderson appears to crib Larson's 8 points. Now at the bottom of that, Larson cited a number of papers, including her own prior work. Anderson appeared to lift these citations in order, but remove Larson's citation to herself, perhaps to avoid leaving a clue that could unravel an academic crime. Larson's name is not mentioned anywhere in Anderson's dissertation. Larson's list had 8 items on it, but Anderson had 12. The 10th item on the list also copied someone else's words verbatim and without quotation marks to make a simple point. I think in current year, sometimes we can view people who are like, hey, I would like credit for thing, as like, well, why do you even care? But I think it's very important to give credit where credit is due. If someone did something or achieved something or was the first one to do something, you should obviously give them the credit for that. Because if you completely obfuscate credit for that, that leaves room for people to lie and claim that they're the ones who deserve credit in the future. When Anderson summarizes a book by Christopher Evans, she is actually copying someone else's summary of Evans' work, even though there is no parenthetical attribution in that section of the text indicating it. The summary on the right by Richard Pogue was from the introduction to the same journal issue where Larson's paper appeared. Likewise, Anderson appears to have simply taken the language of University of Texas medical professor Robert M. Caldwell, writing about computers in medical schools, and changed the name of the field. Caldwell does not appear in the reference section of that chapter. A significant stretch of Anderson's paper is identical to Introduction to Instructional Media, 1978, by David H. Jonasson, even though Jonasson's name never appears in her paper. That includes mirroring Jonasson's language that something was recent in the world of computers, without the reader knowing it was actually new almost a decade prior. How do you do this so shamelessly? Like, if a normal person does something wrong, even if they're like too afraid to own up to it, they still feel varying degrees of shame. How do you go this long and continuously get promoted to places you shouldn't be in and feel entitled to that based on all of your lies? Like, it baffles me. Anderson's personal touches consisted of adding woke language and grammatical errors. For example, a 1,000-word stretch appears copied directly from a paper by Robert Caldwell, 1984, and an introduction to another paper by Christopher R. Brigham and Martin Camp in 1973. The primary difference is that Anderson changed his to his/her, and the correctly spelled judgment to the incorrect judgment with an E. Why would you purposefully make spelling errors for one, and why would you change his to his/her? It's not like these people, like, it's not like you don't know what their gender is years in the future. What are we talking about? What the fuck is the point of that? Anderson's paper proposed using computers to administer quizzes to pharmacy students, but she cribbed information about computers from papers that were woefully out of date even in 1986. One sentence said, "Review of the literature demonstrates there are relatively few methodologically sound evaluations of the effectiveness of computer-assisted instruction." Atkinson, 1968. By the time of her writing, Apple II computers were widely available, and the sort of interactive tests her paper focused on were technically trivial. Yet, with her experience with computers seemingly consisting only of reading old papers about them, her paper went on at length about topics like the comparative advantages of mainframes versus terminals. She copied older scholars' exact language even when explaining such obvious concepts as to why it's better for a computer to be small than big. Microcomputer units may be transported into the environment of the subject. This portion of Anderson's dissertation, designed to drive the field forward, consisted of showing a computer program to students and then asking them questions about their opinions about computers. The interactive activity was programmed by someone else. The questions were also written by another researcher. Startlingly, the conclusion of her original research also appeared to be copied from someone else. These findings suggest that CAI can be as effective and efficient as a more traditional instruction modality in teaching both factual content and application of learned material when both methods use the same instructional content. She wrote, that was virtually identical to a sentence that Elaine G. Botcher wrote 5 years prior. There's Botcher's statement from 1981. Anderson's dissertation says that financial assistance was provided to the author by Purdue University Black Doctoral Fellowship. Man, you can even get paid for plagiarizing other smarter people? That's crazy. posture towards non-black faculty and staff was barely concealed hostility. In July, Satterlee sued the University of Maryland Eastern Shore and Anderson, saying black faculty and administrators are paid vastly higher than others of similar or better qualifications. Heidi Anderson has instituted a two-tier system of racial preferences, discriminating against white and Asian faculty who are given more and less desirable work but significantly lower pay. I'm shocked. The Heidi Anderson administration's posture towards non-black faculty and staff was barely concealed hostility. It was an established practice to pay non-blacks less than blacks, not include them in valuable opportunities, and only exploit their work for personal gain of the select few who were close to the university administration, the federal lawsuit said. Moses Cairo, a former Kenyan national, became the dean of the School of Agriculture and Natural Sciences at UMez in 2012. He exhibited a distinct preference for African nationals in hiring for positions within the school, the lawsuit said. Another Kenyan, an apparent former schoolmate of Cairo's, Grace Namwamba, was hired as the department chair and Satterlee's boss, even though Namwamba had extremely poor work competencies and skills and appeared incapable of writing in English at the level required of a university professor, it said. We got the classic in-group preference here, and also not even caring if those in-group preferred candidates actually have the skills to do the job. Doesn't matter, hire them anyway. Satterlee, the lowest paid faculty member in her department, was assigned double the work of African or African-American faculty. In one instance, Dr. Satterlee was instructed by Dr. Namwamba to create a master's degree program in 2 days. After Dr. Satterlee worked without rest to complete the assignment, Dr. Namwamba took her work product and stole the credit, the suit said. Satterlee said she earned the ire of Anderson and Namwamba after she called for a salary study that would publish faculty pay broken down by race, and by correcting sloppy work by Namwamba in an attempt to save the department from embarrassment. She was the only faculty member to be denied a request for a promotion that year, she said, with the denial letter misspelling her name as Dr. Scatterlee. Unsurprising coming from the people who cannot spell ankle. She said she was disciplined by the school's DEI office, called the Office of Institutional Equity. The office is led by Jason Casares, who was hired after resigning from his job at a different university amid allegations that he sexually assaulted a college administrator. Casares' claim was that Satterlee had bullied her boss. He also accused her of insubordination, to which Satterlee replied, "If a written communication from a department chair is riddled with grammatical errors and misspellings, I have an obligation to call that to her attention, and may do so without fear of reprisal, because ultimately we seek to teach students how to communicate." Oh, that's funny. This is like, I love seeing when professionals have to like use corporate language to insult one another. Not even Clown World anymore, it's Cenobite World, pretty fucking much. She was placed on transitional terminal leave. The lawsuit said the Office of Institutional Equity has no authority to terminate the employment of a tenured professor. Ooh, yeah, tenured professors are super fucking hard to get rid of. They have no idea. And that insubordination is not grounds for any university office to terminate a tenured professor. The lawsuit also said that the University of Maryland Eastern Shore has declined sharply under Anderson's leadership, losing the prized R2 research designation. The university is required to submit a response to the lawsuit by October 10th. Anderson declined to comment for this story. After publication, she put out a public statement saying, "Recent allegations of plagiarism have been raised regarding my 1986 doctoral dissertation. Integrity, accountability, and trust are foundations of my leadership, and I take these concerns with the utmost seriousness." She lied as easily as she breathed. Holy shit. Consistent with the University System of Maryland policy, there will be an assessment of these allegations. I'm deeply grateful for the support of the UMez family during this period. Anderson's published research in the decades since defending her dissertation has been short and of low quality, often published in obscure journals. For one paper, she had students ask 89 people who was their primary source of prescription medication information. Most said they're doctors, so she concluded that pharmacists should consider providing more information.
Spicy.
That seems like a really goofy conclusion from that. In another, she claimed that an unnamed minority faculty member had students repeatedly subject her to racial slurs in class and over the phone, and that this research discovered that colleges should create a grievance process for student-faculty conflicts. This lady just a bitch. Anderson repeatedly attained high academic positions. I was the first African American to serve as president of the Accreditation Council on Pharmaceutical Education. You know, with finding out that Harvard lady plagiarized, with finding out that this Maryland lady plagiarized, with everything that was fake about Jason Arday, reasonable people would come to the conclusion, holy shit, we need to do a double check on all credentials of all African and African American staff. Because once is a fluke, 2 can be coincidental, 3, it becomes a pattern. The national accrediting body. She testified to Congress in 2021, and the Chronicle of Higher Education also recognized UMES as having the second most diverse faculty. Allow me to say that because we launched this program during the COVID pandemic, our efforts were not as robust or as smooth as it otherwise might have been. She acknowledged to lawmakers in written remarks about her school's use of federal funds. One of the important issues we face as a nation and world are the challenges brought about by climate change. Oh, shut the fuck up. She told Congress that the university, which is both a historically black college and an agricultural college, what? Would focus on creating safe spaces where farmers can meet monthly. In 2023, Anderson served as president of the American Association of State Colleges and Universities, making her the face of public universities. The face of all public universities. That's crazy. Literally frauded her way to these positions. Satterley, the professor who was forced out, said that Anderson's alleged pattern of forcing white professors to do the work while black faculty take credit mirrors the apparent deception that began her academic career. Heidi's PhD has been obtained by fraud and by her passing off the work of other scholars as her own work. How can a university tell its students to be honest if its president is herself dishonest? Very true. She told the Daily Wire. She called on Jay Perman, chancellor of the University System of Maryland, to fire Anderson. Michael Sandler, a spokesperson for the University System of Maryland, told the Daily Wire, "We are aware of the allegations raised against President Anderson and are reviewing them with our policies. We will determine the next steps once that process is complete." In September 2024, the Daily Wire revealed that a 5,000-word paper on rocket science by Daryl Pines, the president of Maryland's flagship campus at College Park, copied a 1,500-word stretch from a tutorial website by an Australian student. You have supposed accredited professors copying words from students, man. Come the fuck on. The Daily what? Daily Wire. The paper, by Pines and a co-author, did not mention or cite the student anywhere, and attempted to change his British spellings to American ones, potentially a telltale sign that Pines knew he had not written the material and was attempting to deceive readers. This is a big problem when people have a cultural value of deception. You cannot expect people who value the ability to deceive others, and if you get deceived, that's your fault, I actually did nothing wrong. You cannot have them in these kinds of positions. They need to be able to assimilate into Western values and value being truthful and honest above being able to deceive people. This is getting insane. I am so sick of the is that. In response, Pine wrote that I acknowledge recurrent language and said an investigation would begin. Perman's office said the review would be conducted jointly by the College Park campus and the statewide system, and the two parties will use an expert consultant at an external law firm to lead the review. The consultant will determine who will serve on the review panel. A month later, the Australian student who said it was clearly plagiarism not worthy of an academic said the panel hadn't contacted him. More than a year later, that panel has said nothing publicly, and Perman's office has declined to share any updates. It just feels like something weird is going on, Professor Nick Sabert told the Baltimore Banner in July. It doesn't feel like they're taking it very seriously. Well, that's because you're right, and they're not, and they won't. Perhaps the BBC could do an update on this remarkable story. And this guy's quote retweeting, "Diagnosed with autism disorder at the age of 3, Jason Arday learned to read and write at 18. On Monday, he'll start work at Cambridge University's youngest black professor. It was a real privilege to help tell his story at BBC News." And this is a post from March 2nd, 2023.
Where maybe I couldn't speak and I couldn't converse in a way that everyone else could, because it allowed me to see things in a different way.
Professor Jason Arday was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder at the age of 3. He couldn't speak until he was 11 and read or write until he was 18. Throughout his early years, his parents continued to believe in him.
Look at the way he walks, man. Is this guy real? Is this an AI amalgamation? Are we all being fucking punked here, dude? Why does it look like this lamppost was fucking photoshopped in? What are we doing?
At 18, my mum had got to a point where there was only so much she could do, and she was brilliant, even though she had this belief that, you know, he'll do something okay, but she was just decided, I need someone else to believe in him as much as I.
That's crazy that you're gonna call your mom brilliant when you're also claiming that you were illiterate until 18. Let's be fucking real here. Your parents were fucking garbage if you were illiterate at 18.
I believe in him.
Therapists predicted he would need full-time assistance throughout his life. How wrong they were.
You okay?
How
It was this
wrong
man,
they were.
college tutor Sandro.
Wow, he suddenly became a super functioning person. Wow, it's magic. It's the magic soil of England.
To read and write at 18.
I'm just so happy for him. You know, I'm speechless, to be honest. But I never doubt a moment they would achieve where he is.
Sandro would spend hours of his free time teaching Jason.
There's one thing you said to me which I never forgot.
Someone needs to revoke this guy's teaching credentials. He does not deserve it.
And it was when I was 22, and I said to you I was thinking about doing a PhD. And you said to me, like, you know, it would be the greatest story in the world if the kid who didn't know how to read and write was managed to get a PhD. Like, and you said, like, I think, you know, we can take on the world, or you can take on the world, and you can win. And I never forgot that.
And now Jason is days
That guy's like, yes, this is so good for my white guilt. Please keep praising my abilities to teach you, dear wonder child.
away from achieving another ambition.
Hey, so good to see you.
Here's his new boss at Cambridge.
We do have a lot of work to do, but I feel really optimistic. I think
Part of his research will look at new ways to make higher education more accessible for everyone.
You mean more accessible for people like him who are fraudulent liars and every aspect of their credentials is just made the fuck up?
What can we do to ensure that this isn't a market appointment in 5 years' time? How can this become the norm?
we've listened to the voices of our black scholars and our black students, and some of it has not been easy to hear, to be honest. But we're able to face up to some of the structural issues that people face.
There will be those that think this is a tokenistic appointment. What are your thoughts on this?
He's got like this dumb fucking bitch smile on his face. Look at that, dude.
The board of electors on your interview day were absolutely unanimous. We are so lucky to have you.
Oh, this is the one from the other article where they said she was positively cooing over her new pet. And that's pretty much what it is.
You are the best in the world in terms of the research that you do.
The best in the world in the terms of the research that you do. Literally everything that he's done was either fake, plagiarized, not even actually written, or he was just claiming he was a co-writer on something that he wasn't even there for. Literally, how... I hate these people so much. We have so much work to do to fix all of this bullshit we've been subjected to.
An extraordinary journey, but for Jason, this is not an end. It's a beginning.
The reaction has been amazing, and I'm truly grateful to everyone.
Well, it would have been a beginning for him to have some sort of comeuppance and repercussions for all of the lies he told, except now he's dead.
For their kind sentiment and kind words. We've got a lot of work to do.
Celestina Olulode, BBC News, Cambridge.
The fuck was that name? The fucking the Star Wars? What? Yeah, I don't see the BBC offering any kind of corrections at any point now, you know? Bro rolled a nat 20 in every conversation he ever had. Internet Zen Master, thank you. New ways to make education more accessible. How about, and hear me out, we keep it hard for people to access. Not everyone should be able to get into higher education. Hard agree. You need to have some sort of like qualifications in place to make sure people who want to be there, people who have the like ability to be there, are the ones being put there. Well, like, it sucks if that's somewhere you want to be and you can't fucking do it. Nobody likes being told no. But you also have to kind of be like, yeah, you know, I kind of know where my limitations are. I know what I'm capable of, and getting a professorship at Cambridge, certainly not fucking one of them. This is Donna Luis. Jason Arday called the police on anyone who questioned him. Warnings that were ignored. This is the David Harris case that we've already read. When Harris contacted Arday directly, Arday accused him of valuing grammar above equity. That's a new line. Of course grammar should be valued above equity. The fuck you mean by this, fraudulent man? His supporters. Professor Sir Simon Baron-Cohen, director of Cambridge's Autism Research Center, wrote on July 31st that plagiarism should of course always be investigated, but that he could not stand by while an autistic man on the ground continued to be kicked. He called it relentless bullying of a vulnerable autistic man and said it was time to stop. Again, people like Sir Simon Baron-Cohen here know exactly what they're doing. They're not retarded when they say this dumb shit. They say it because they hope enough people will feel shame when he taps into this emotional language and will just stop asking questions. His earlier speaker biographies and profiles that named WaterAid have since had the reference removed. In the memoir itself, he now refers only to, quote-unquote, an organization installing water pumps in Brazil without naming WaterAid. Daniel Engber at The Atlantic obtained the original 2024 book proposal. It contains episodes that do not appear in the finished book. A teenage car accident that left him in a locked-in coma for months, doctors advising his parents to withdraw life support as an act of mercy, and a full year relearning how to walk and talk. Wow! If this guy just ain't a little bundle of Christmas fucking miracles, bro! The memoir says only that he spent those months finishing secondary school and sitting exams. The proposal also mentions testicular cancer, which does not appear in the finished book. He thought the cancer was a step too far. He's like, you know, I can lie about helping the children in Brazil. I can lie about that, but testicular cancer, that's too far for me, man. Can't lie about that. The memoir itself describes Arday as having survived 2 brain tumors. A claim absent from the proposal. Was this guy a V-tweeter with how many medical things he fucking fabricates? Holy shit. The 2010 blog versus the later legend and what he told Andy Murray. In 2010, Arday kept a public blog of the 30 marathons and 35 days challenge. There is no mention of a hairline fracture, a leg swollen to twice its size, or completing the final 9 marathons while injured. Those details appeared years later. In November 2012, Andy Murray told the press that Arday had told him he was an epileptic who ran 30 marathons in 35 days. An epileptic! Are you fucking kidding me? He suffered a seizure and a hairline fracture on the 20th day and continued. The contemporary blog contains none of it. Fucking Baron Munchausen. He's trying to stack every debuff, and it worked! Nobody questioned him because they were like, yeah, this is the perfect DEI hire. Why would we question this? Who cares if it's real? This is what we want. He was never trained as a sociologist. Jason Arday has no degree, no master's, and no PhD in sociology. How does he have literally no... He will never be a real academic. His entire formal academic training is in education and physical education. Guy was a gym teacher pretending to be a fucking scholar. What the fuck? Usually gym teachers only lie about touching the kids. This is wild. He has a bachelor's in education studies and physical education, a master's in education and pedagogy, a second master's in education, and a PhD in education specifically on peer mentoring among student teachers training to become physical education teachers. That is such a fucking niche thing, it might as well be a napkin from a McDonald's. What the fuck? Cambridge should never live this down. They absolutely should not. That is a doctorate in physical education teacher training. It is not sociology. It contains no sociological theory, no sociological methods, and no sustained engagement with the core literature of the discipline. Yet, within a few years, the same man was appointed associate professor in the Department of Sociology at Durham, put in front of students teaching modules called Sociology of Education and Societies in Transition, then made professor of the Sociology of Education at Glasgow, and then made professor of the Sociology of Education at Cambridge. This man is like the DEI final boss. And I only say that because we don't know exactly how many of this exact guy are currently in education administration. I would be willing to bet a whole fucking lot of them, bro. Especially if they keep coming out with, like, deans and leaders of departments with plagiarization. Like, there's no fucking way. The DEI chimera. At Cambridge, students in the Faculty of Education were paying close to £10,000 a year. Some of that money was buying teaching and supervision from a man whose highest qualification in the subject he was employed to profess was nothing. He had never studied sociology as an undergraduate, never taken a master's in it, and never written a doctoral thesis in it. The word sociology appeared only in the job title. This is what you're paying for. Literally do not send your kids to college at this point. Institutions simply accepted the redescription. A physical education and education academic was relabeled as a sociologist, and students were charged elite university fees to be taught by him. Actually, his skin color was black, and therefore he is, by life experience, more qualified to be a sociologist than anyone else. You bigot. Those kids should sue the school. I mean, I fucking would. A diagnosis that does not fit the criteria of its time. Arday has said repeatedly that he was diagnosed at the age of 3, around 1988, with a hybrid of global development delay and Asperger's syndrome. There are two immediate problems with that claim. First, Asperger's syndrome was not an official diagnostic category in 1988. It only entered the major classification systems in the early 1990s. The ICD-10 in 92-93 and the DSM-4 in 1994. Before that, it was a research concept, not a standard diagnosis a clinician in Britain would routinely hand to a 3-year-old's parents. Second, even after it became an official diagnosis, a defining requirement of Asperger's was the absence of any clinically significant general delay in language. The criteria required single words by age 2 and communicative phrases by age 3. Arday's own account is that he was nonverbal until 11 and communicated by sign language. There is no fucking way you're getting me to believe this guy knows sign language. ITV Cultural Advisory Council, sessions for aspiring vice chancellors, Shaw Trust Disability Power 100 listed 4th. Named among the most influential people of 2023. That's crazy, man. Genius within Neurodiversity Achiever of the Year 2023. Patron and trustee roles, honorary doctorates, speaking fees, and the alleged £1.4 million memoir deal. All of it rested on the same largely unverified origin story. The cost of not checking and the real victims. People keep asking whether we should feel sorry for him. No. This was not a series of unfortunate misunderstandings. It was a sustained pattern of exaggerated and fabricated claims about adversity, athletic feats, charity fundraising, academic positions, and research data, used to secure appointments, platforms, status, and money. It's the DEI Oppression Olympics, buddy. Better qualified people lost out. That's true. How many people had their lives and careers derailed because this fraudulent wacko was put in a position he didn't deserve? How many people have lost out on this because of all of the DEI hires around all of our countries? Julie Bindell has said she personally knows 2 women from disadvantaged backgrounds, both, in her views, far stronger candidates, who were passed over for jobs that went to Arday. Well, they should have been the right mix match of identities. Students at Cambridge paid for expert supervision and, according to the Telegraph, received minimal contact, excuses, and the repeated assurance that their work was outstanding and needed no further guidance. Some appealed, some asked to change supervisor, one was accused of racism for doing so. That is not a victimless process. Every time ordinary questions were asked, the response was lawyers, police reports, or accusations of racism and harassment. 3 separate people who raised evidence-based concerns were reported to the police. None of those complaints were pursued. The resignation statement frames the entire episode as an unrelenting campaign of personal attack that became too much to bear. The scrutiny was not unprovoked. It was the inevitable result of years of extraordinary claims that did not survive examination, combined with a consistent strategy of treating anyone who examined them as the aggressor. He brought this upon himself. The institutions that elevated him without proper checks share that responsibility. The people who lost opportunities and the students who received inadequate supervision are the ones who paid the price. No, I do not feel sorry for him. No one should. He is a disgusting individual that should have nothing but ire. The bill that never arrived? Students paid nearly £10,000 a year to be taught by a man who had never studied the subject he was employed to profess. Better qualified candidates were passed over. Journalists who asked ordinary questions were reported to the police. We kind of already read that. Jason Arday built a career, a public profile, six-figure memoir deal, and a Cambridge chair on claims that did not survive basic scrutiny. When the scrutiny arrived, he reached for every available defense. Racism, disability, mental health, Carter Ruck, those are the lawyers, the police, and still the claims collapsed. He has resigned, the investigations continue, the book is still scheduled. Liverpool John Moore says the PhD stands. Cambridge has opened an inquiry 3 years after it was first warned. None of that returns the posts, the fees, the years, or the credibility that was spent defending a legend no one properly examined. The scandal is not only what he claimed, it is how long so many people chose to believe it. You need to stop looking at absolutely everyone involved in this as someone who is gullible. A lot of the people, and especially the people, when you read their background on the council that chose to hire him for professorship, they did not choose to believe these things about him. They probably knew this is all bullshit, but he is the perfect person to hire and we need him. Says to understand just how irredeemably messed up academia is, compare the differences in how Cambridge treated Jason Arday and how Harvard treated Roland Fryer. One is a black sociologist, well, we know that's also bullshit at this point, unfortunately. The other is a black economist. At this point, we are all very well acquainted with Jason Arday's insane fabrications, plagiarism, and less than stellar research record. Yet, he became the youngest black professor in Cambridge's history at 37. Now look at the case of Roland Fryer. He produced rigorous, data-driven research, published extensively, and ran a major institute, education labs, at Harvard. He doggedly pursued the truth on one of the most charged questions in American public life. His landmark 2016 study, titled An Empirical Analysis of Racial Differences in Police Use of Force, examined millions of encounters and officer-involved shootings. It found that there were no racial differences in the raw data or after controlling for circumstances. In some data sets, notably Houston, blacks were actually less likely to be shot once the encounter was underway. As you know, this finding directly contradicted Black Lives Matter core orthodoxy that police systematically and disproportionately kill black men out of racial animus. It was not only in vogue at the time, it was literally religion. Roland Fryer and his data were guilty of blasphemy. Harvard launched investigations into allegations of verbal sexual harassment in a hostile work environment in his lab. The process produced a 2-year unpaid suspension, the permanent shutdown of ed labs, and severe restrictions on his ability to supervise or advise. All of this was investigated by a kangaroo court under Title IX. The recommendation for his alleged failings was sensitivity training. Yet a faculty panel escalated it into career-crippling punishment. Fryer has said that he was unfairly targeted because of the political inconveniences of his results, and he's fucking correct. It's just like I said earlier, these DEI acolytes, they do not want an intelligent black man. They do not want a black man that actually belongs at a prestigious institution. They want someone who is a liar and a fraud because they are easier to control. This guy also did research in a very contested area, and his findings were against the current religious orthodoxy. He needed to be made an example of. They do not encourage independent thought or actually doing real research. It is a, Ouroboros of fraudulent people hiring more fraudulent people and stacking more fake credentials on their name. The contrast between how the Academy treated these two men shows you how deep the moral rot is. It is. This is a screenshot of something that says Amazon. Once again, Arday is succeeding in the face of many obstacles, uplifted by the many angels in his life and given the opportunity to do great things. This was the true miracle of his career, that the system could be bent to meet his needs, and then it could be bent a little further, and bent until it fit the wild arc of a fairy tale. Oh my god. Yeah? I made a mistake. Jason Arday isn't even a sociologist despite being hired as a sociologist professor. When you realize how horrific people are treated, regardless of their skin color, if they are dedicated to trying to do research, to trying to figure out the truth, pretty much everything all of these DEI acolytes is doing unravels very easily in front of you.